cut all the sign and like location out of it, your mistake might be that you're not getting enough cover and you move too much.
Right.
Like you may not even know that you're the hunter that moves too much until I mean, you could be getting busted and not even know it in some examples. Like I'm sure that there's been times that that's happened to all hunters, but like that could be an individual's mistake every time. Another guy's mistake might be that he's burying himself in the cover and he can't move enough. But until you
Yeah.
have that experience where you just completely screw up, whatever it may be, you may not even know that like you're even doing those things.
Welcome to the Just Hunt Podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Just Hunt Podcast, episode 22. We're going to jump right into it. We have Zach Ferenbaugh from the Hunting Public. Thanks for joining us this evening, Mr. Ferenbaugh.
Oh yeah.
How you doing?
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. It's been a while since I've done a podcast, so
Has it?
like a little bit wired.
Yeah.
Yeah, like been a guest on one. I haven't for a while.
Well, you told us a minute ago before we started recording that you might jump up and start walking around in the middle of it. So.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna be pretty distracting to those watching, just moving around a lot. 'Cause I've been, I've worked out this morning, but been sitting editing all day, so I'm just like, stuck in this chair a little bit. But
How long do you, when you're on that program, which I think you are a lot in the summer, it's like editing and working out and editing. Like, what does your day look like when you do that?
It just looks like I'm sitting here kind of just, I don't know, day in and day out, just starting a video from scratch, finishing it a lot of times, like since 2020 summer. I think that's what every summer's been, is just pretty much editing elk hunting videos. And I mean, every year it changes a little bit, but I wake up in the morning and usually don't always try to work out before I edit. I usually feel better on those days, but otherwise, it's like, at least pretty typical like workday hours. I'm just sitting here doing this, and it about half drives me insane at times because I just get to where that's all I'm thinking about all day, and that's unhealthy.
Does editing elk videos remind you that you need to get in shape and get a workout because you're like, oh man, yep, I need to. I bet it does.
Absolutely. You can see how it feels.
Yep.
In some clips, and you're like, oh yeah,
yeah,
like that's gonna be pretty shitty if I don't actually do something this summer and get myself in shape.
Yeah.
So that helps. And
quick.
I mean, something I was thinking about a little bit ago, like something I really liked when I was playing sports, was watching film. And watching hunting videos, editing is like watching film.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to just see your mistakes over and over and over and over again, which can be disheartening. You can be like, dang, man, that sucks. Wish we didn't do it that way. But at the same time, you get a lot of repetition on the things that you would do differently now, knowing the outcome. So I think that part of it's really sweet, and it helps me get in the mindset so far ahead of time that by the time it gets here, it's mentally, I'm like, okay, so as long as the physical side of it is, complying with the mental side of things, it's like I'm pretty ready to rock by, the time I'm finally done, and then we're going into season.
What are some of the things you do during this time of year to get ready physically when you are working out or exercising or training, whatever you call it?
Yeah, moving my body. I like I really like doing yoga, stretching.
Really? Yeah.
In general, I think that really helps just mobility, because otherwise, like sitting here, I get stiffer than a board. So I usually try to start like every day with some sort of stretching. A lot of times I end the day with stretching too, like just after dark, sitting around. If we got TV, like we watch basketball a lot, or just watching whatever, I guess. I'll just sit there and stretch. And then I also like to lift weights. I also like to run. I also have been playing basketball lately, which Matt knows about. I got pretty serious
I heard
down
about
there.
basketball. in the.
What's that?
I heard about some basketball in some sketchy parts of West Virginia. Maybe.
Yeah, one of the last times.
Absolutely.
Last time I saw Zach, we were underneath a highway outside of a coal plant on some. It was actually a fairly nice basketball court for what it was.
It was pretty nice. It was. I mean,
not many weeds going up to the
it.
cracks.
No, it was pretty good.
It was pretty awesome.
Had those double rims, which were not great, but.
What's that?
I said it had those double rims, which weren't great, but.
That's true.
Take it.
But as far as just like overall quality, it was like pretty surprising that existed where it did, just like a little public area under the overpass. It's like, I don't know. It felt like, you know what that felt like? It felt a lot like picking some random, like you're playing a video game and it's like pick the outdoor court and like that's what that scene was from. It's like a video game set.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So that's good. Funny. So doing all that stuff, how are you doing? Are you doing it every day?
I try to.
Yeah.
I try to, like, if I take a day off, I at least walk. That's the other thing. I at least run or walk. Like, I get pretty pissed off if I don't get to 10,000 steps. Like, that seems like pretty minimum effort I could put into the day. You know, so I go for walks, I go for runs. I mean, I got to do something to break up this sitting here because, like, you know, you go hunting all season. And I mean, obviously we have our editing vendors during season too, but when you at least have hunting to do in the morning and evening, you're at least getting to go move your legs and stretch and, you know, just kind of get your body moving. And for the most part, that works. I'd say at the end of every season, I feel pretty rough just because I'm not moving in all the different ways that I could be. But, you know, you stay active enough that your heart's in good shape. But then when I get home and I just switch to sitting right here and being much more sedentary, I gotta just constantly like take some sort of break and do something else, or, you know, whatever it takes, I guess, to just keep myself sane. Because I don't like how I feel. I love editing, but I don't like how I feel afterwards when I don't move.
Yeah. I think 10,000 steps is a pretty good baseline for anyone. I think that there'd be the population would be a lot slimmer.
My wife's on this kick where I think it's 13,000, but she's like has to, or else I think she's like 90 something days, and she's like, I'm not breaking the streak. She's like, I'm going to. I'm like, all right. Fair enough.
I mean, I can relate for sure. Yeah. It's pretty frustrating when you've been doing something, because it also makes you feel, I guess to me, anytime my heart rate gets going, everything just seems to like matter a lot less. You know, it's like, I can be relaxed a little bit. It kind of just clears my mind up. And I mean, when I was a kid, I had just sports constantly, so it was like,
you never had that feeling.
It kind of takes care of itself, you know. But when I had to relearn it as an adult, for sure, because there was a time in my life I was not doing this. You know, I was drinking a lot of beer, chewing snuff, and, you know, just being out of shape generally. You know, like looking back on it, it's like, oof.
Do you remember how you felt then?
Oh yeah, just real sluggish. Like, I mean, just generally slower, and, you know, like everything felt. I remember when I need to catch my breath, it was a lot harder to handle. Like, that was much more uncomfortable feeling than it is now. It has been for, you know, for sure 5 or 6 years now. I'd say I'm a lot better shape than I was to previous, I guess. But about 2015 or 2014 is about the peak of it. If you guys want to share some, I got some pretty hilarious fat Zach pictures in the in the iPhone album.
Was that Midwest Whitetail intern days or right before that?
It was before it, when I reached the peak of like how unhealthy I was being.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, in hindsight, looking back on that, a lot of it's just all of a sudden I didn't have sports, which was super important to me, and then I just got, you know, hunting at that time too wasn't like what it is now for me.
No.
The
Yeah.
style is just sit and be patient. And, turkey hunting, we were running and gunning, but even that wasn't at the level that it is now. And it really took kind of changing my mentality in hunting to get to where that was something to work towards, I guess. When you're playing sports, winning is what you're working towards with, and I like team sports. So like winning with your team, like working hard to win. And it doesn't matter if you're like on the complete other end of the, calendar from when the season is, like you're working hard to get better.
Yeah.
And I really like that as a motivator, but then when all of a sudden I didn't have that, it's like hunting wasn't like, what's there to work hard for? We're just going to walk out there and sit down.
Yeah.
What do I got to be in shape for? And because I did that all the time, it really wasn't much of a motivator until I started switching the way that I hunted. And that started really motivating me. Because, like, I mean, if you like, I mean, no matter how you do it, I mean, even saddle hunting, tree stand hunting, like, if you're going back in like the places that you guys hunt all the time, like you got to be in damn good shape to get back in there, or you're just gonna hate it.
Well,
I mean, you can do it, but it's gonna suck.
That's the thing. Yeah, I've realized as I get just older that it's not like you can't do it. You can do it still, but it's like, can you do it the next day and the next day? And are you going to feel good about it? And are you going to be positive? And then are you going to like want to do it? Like, are you going to be like, this sucks? Like I could do it, but so I think it's like the physical aspect plays into the mental aspect. And that's why I talk about it a lot. Just like some of the times I even sit for a week, people think it's like, I'm like, you have to feel good physically and mentally to be able to pull any of these types of challenging things off. And so I think that's the big thing is like, you may be able to like, it doesn't take much physical ability to just sit there or like, honestly, a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff you do and we do, like almost anybody could do it and push themselves, but it's like, are they going to continue to do that day after day, stay positive, stay fresh, stay sharp? It's tough if you're not
the hardest, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think back to so step one, like coming out of, I don't know, hopefully it's not offensive to anybody, calling myself Fat Zach, but coming out of Fat Zach days, it was like step one was like, okay, find a way to motivate yourself to work out and stay consistent with that. Okay, so like that's the next thing. But then there's a window of time where, and this is kind of playing into all this mental stuff, like I wasn't recognizing that lack of sleep was just totally wrecking my brain too. And by golly, I love getting up to hunt turkeys. But at a certain point, it's like,
you're fried.
If they're gobbling later into the morning, then like I better not be getting up like at 3 a.m. and going to sleep at 11 every single day of my life, or I'm gonna just it's not good for you.
No.
And so that's been my new thing in the last couple of seasons. Is like, okay, how do I get better sleep or just rest at the right times? How do you time that rest? Does that mean you go home? Does that mean you sit in camp for an edit or whatever? Does that mean you just sleep in for a couple hours? Like whatever that means, there's definitely some benefit to kind of learning what works for you, I think, as a hunter or whatever you're doing, like getting rest is so important. And for a long time there, I just would basically, I mean, I can get up, like I like hunting enough that it's pretty easy to get up, but that's not always the right decision. If I wake up and I feel terrible, well then what good am I going to be out there? Especially if I start, arguing with, or not even arguing, but like bickering with who I'm with or whatever. Not anything. Not anything terrible that we don't get over.
It's just
like,
exhausted.
But it's just
shit. Your brain isn't working and everything's. It's really your outlook and your. It's like a more dude. I'm telling you, hunger and fatigue, just that your mind turns pessimistic. And then he starts framing everything in that pessimistic light. And then it all just like slowly crumbles and just goes downhill. Whereas if you're rested, you eat good, you're in shape, you feel good, it's a positive thing. It's, you can keep doing it and you can do it well. There's no like that's such a big part of it. And I honestly don't think people realize when they're like starting to unravel, like at the beginning. They don't like all of a sudden they're just smoked and they're like, what happened?
Yeah.
It's like, well,
No, I don't. That's what I mean. Like I can think of, a lot of specific examples and hunts, like back in 2021, especially those years where it's just like, man, especially turkey, because turkey season's such weird days. Less with deer and elk, more with turkey.
Well, because it gets dark at a reasonable
bury
hour.
myself.
The days are shorter with deer, so it's like you're done, you eat, you hang out, you're asleep by 9 or 10 o'clock. Turkeys, it's like freaking brutal. It's like midnight, get up at 3.
Well, and it gets worse as the season goes on.
And it gets way worse. So you get more tired, and then the days get longer, and then it's like,
how did we get here?
End of May, and you're just like not even the same human you were 2-3 months ago. You're just
which deer season has the kind of the flip, it's like the early season's pretty long days,
right?
But still not as bad, and then it flips and it just gets even. I mean, by December, January time frame, it's like if you're still hunting at that time, to me those nights, I mean those days, nights, whatever, like you're feeling more rested, or at least I feel like I am. Maybe not at the very, very end, but you know what I mean.
The older I get, though, the more that stuff I just see it it's pretty quick. I'm like, oh shit, like I need to sleep, I need to eat right, I need to be in better shape, because it's just less forgiving.
I think it's what, like we said, getting older, you just get a little bit, I don't know, you just get a little bit better at recognizing when things are not gonna work out or whatever. And if you can relate it back to something that you're doing, that's...
Yeah. I even just think about, like, driving. Not that I still don't do this. I do sometimes. But, like, I used to just, like, drive for, like, a day and get up and go, like, crazy and, like, not sleep much while I'm somewhere. And just, like, all right, we got to go somewhere else. And just, like, leave. And I'm like, dude, that takes a lot out of you. Like... I don't do that so much anymore. I'm like, well, maybe we'll just stay here tonight and leave in the morning. And be like, no, we got to get there by daybreak tomorrow. Let's leave. It's like drive through the night. Just some of the stuff we used to do.
It's all relative. It's like, I think it's just so, it's one of those situations where, for me, if I'm doing it alone, it just starts getting dangerous, because I'm not.
Yeah.
I get so mentally fried that when I'm driving like that it's like, I can't do this anymore. I got to just call it a night. Just sitting there staring at the road is pretty rough. But yeah, I do. I mean, hunting trips are definitely a weird thing for sleep, but it's something that I'm definitely getting better at. Slowly but surely. Still have plenty of errors out there, trust me.
Yeah.
When you started taking better care of yourself, is that around the same time that you started ground hunting more exclusively? What was like the mindset with that? Was it mutually exclusive, or do you think they relate?
I think they definitely relate. I think it is like, kind of going back to the wise, as you're getting older, you're getting a little wiser. Like, I think at that time I was finally starting to see that, okay, all this time since, I'd been slowly getting back into working out and had slowed down drinking, things like that. I'd started to get a little bit better shape, but then it wasn't until like, 18, 19, 20 where I started really making those shifts. But I think I was finally starting to realize, okay, you don't have anything that's motivating you anymore. This ground hunting's pretty fun, which I had started doing it. Like, if I can just channel kind of the motivation to work out and just think about how much nicer it's going to be when, you want to chase that, whatever it is. I mean, I'll run around and start running uphill and start thinking about, man, like, what would you do if a turkey was gobbling on that other side of the hill? And it'll literally piss me off enough to make me like get up that hill when I would, you know how it is, where like it'd be easy. Nobody's going to blame you for stopping. But if you think about the turkey or the bull bugling or the buck or whatever, I mean, whenever something's starting to hurt, I think about that stuff. And
I remember,
I don't know, it helps me just like channel some I don't know, aggression, I guess, or like motivation to get going.
I remember a turkey I killed with John a few years back on a ski mountain, and it was it was like the slope was like this. It was like a double black diamond, like the steepest thing on the whole mountain. And he
Uh-huh.
kept gobbling and he'd respond, but he was going up. He was going up, and like I was like trying to get above him. And like we couldn't. I was getting like pissed. I'm like, what? This thing is whooping us, and we're like
Yeah.
hands and knees at one point. And we just freaking just mountain climbed up that thing to the top. Finally got above him and killed him. Just like the second we got above him, we killed him right away. And I was like,
Yep.
yeah, it felt so good to like get that in. It was such a physical hunt.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
and there's no way we would have killed him if we hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
But it whooped us. Like we were like in rough shape. It
Oh,
was
yeah.
like brutal. We were just sitting there like just like beat red. I could just feel my freaking heart beating in my forehead. Like, but I mean, yeah, that's a great reason to be in shape because like
Yeah.
obviously, like I said, you can do that once, but if don't have the ability, you're not going to kill that turkey. And if you're hunting in those places, then it makes sense to be. And even if you're hunting anywhere, really, like I said, I just think you just stay mentally sharp and
Mhm.
more energy and more focus.
Yeah, and I guess I don't want to. I'm not sitting here trying to be the guy that's saying you got to do all these things. Like
No,
I don't.
no,
I feel like sometimes people like are like, oh man, like you don't have to be in shape to hunt. It's like, man, I'm not saying that. It's just that's what
no.
keeps me feeling good and feeling happy. Like really. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be, you
Yeah,
know,
no,
real irritable.
I don't think you have to be in shape, honestly. You really, for a lot of different huntings, you can get by. It's just, once again, do you want to feel good doing it? And do you
hmm
want to be focused and sharp and like,
And be able to do it for a long time.
yeah,
That's the other real intention. Like, I see my dad still able to do it. He's gonna turn 60 in January.
yeah,
And it's like he's still, I mean, he beat me shooting baskets the other day, like shooting around
yeah,
around the world or whatever. Like, guy's real real capable at 60, and I want to be like that.
hmm
Actually, here's how I see it. I'm gonna be better than he is, so he better get to work too. Like, why not be competitive
yeah.
against him? That's
Let
the
them know.
person I'm probably the most competitive against.
Well, that's good. Hopefully, you can keep the body moving while you're editing these vids for everybody, and
Oh,
then
I'm sure.
roll right in. Um, what do you guys? Well, I don't know if you're. What do you? What you can tell us? I know that
hmm
sometimes, understandably so, you guys don't want to share everything about the future plans, but is there anything unique or different about this fall compared to others that you've got planned?
Um, I would say there are some things like I got we got buddies that we got a bunch of elk tags this year
You do.
already. Like THP guys that are like, friends of THP that you've
Yep.
seen before. A lot of people have elk tags, so that's exciting. Um, the other thing is we've got some like group hunts that are just stuff that people drew deer tags, like
Okay.
muzzleloader. One's a muzzleloader hunt for whitetail, one's a um, mule deer hunt for with a rifle. So that's exciting. I'm excited about those little group. They're smaller group hunts, but like 3 guys on one, 4 on another. I'm excited about that. And then I guess after last bow season, and then also I guess last muzzleloader season. Well, first thing was I really liked hunting um, West Virginia. I think I'd like to try that again if possible. Um, that's something that's on the top of my mind. Wisconsin is always on the list of options as well, of things like I'm dying to do. And then the last thing is after hunting during muzzleloader season with snow, I'm like itching to track bad. Like definitely want to do that. Um, I'm gonna work really hard to commit time to doing that this year and like maybe just try to commit a lot of time to it. Even if like the conditions aren't right for tracking, just go up there and
Wow,
ram
yeah.
around with a gun and learn it. Like just
Wow.
hike and try doing different stuff because I know I would love that,
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't have snow coming up and just being out, well, problem is you might fill your tag before you get snow. But so, like, oh, whoop, cry me a river, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably find something else to do at
yeah,
some point.
yeah. But I mean, just being up there and learning, it's like, the biggest reason I think that I'm successful, because I track, but I don't track that much. Like, I pick days,
Hmm.
but like,
Oh yeah.
if you look at like the days tracked to the deer I've killed, it's pretty high because I just know exactly where I need to be. Like when that snow comes, I'm like, here we go. Like I know where I need to be because I just have
Yep.
such a good handle on kind of what's going on in my particular areas. So
Yeah, so essentially it's helping you cut it
oh
earlier,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or even, I mean, some days if you're not in the right spot, you may not even find a good track that day. So like yeah,
Hmm.
not only is it putting me on it early in the day and giving me enough time, but it's putting me on it that day, which, like I said, sometimes you could
Hmm.
have the ideal snow condition, but you don't have the right track or can't find it. And I've had days like that where
Yeah.
it's like I've had multiple days where you walk all day long and you just don't find the track that you want. And so you just think, well, I'm sure there was a big one that got up and made some tracks somewhere today. I just not where I was, right? So if you can be in those
Hmm.
spots, then that cuts it down. So if you're able to
Oh
come
yeah.
up and scout and find those areas, and you're like, that's where I think I need to be, and then boom, when the snow
Yeah.
goes, you're right there, and you're way ahead of the game. So that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
So,
I think that's just something that I don't know, I'm getting into that. I'm into the idea after even just doing it out west, like hunting with a gun is in mountains is certainly a different
yeah,
situation, like even if you're mule deer hunting, like you get in the right timber patch, it's no different than the stuff that's,
no,
in some of those videos I'm watching in Maine,
yeah,
like what or whatever,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like looks pretty damn similar. And I
yeah,
think just kind of that recent interest, and then I mean I certainly have some goals bow hunting. I mean, there's a couple places that I'd like to try to figure out this year. I've been putting a lot of effort into scouting them.
Are those goals related to like the area, or what's like
Area.
the area and
Totally the area.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm like kind of a dork for that. I'm realizing it's like I kind of I love places that like kind of whoop my ass. Like if there's a place that I've been and I can't quite figure it out, you know, I ask many about. I mean,
yeah,
you literally know because I tell you guys like you
yeah,
you know where I'm talking about. It's like, oh, there's places that I'm so obsessed with that I probably shouldn't be, but that goes, I mean, more than just region like of the East, right? It's like there's tons of them out here that I've
yeah.
been messing with in the last few years, and I don't know that's fun to me just to kind of like chip away at different areas and then move on too. Like I like to know an area and then or feel like I've kind of I don't know. You never know an area completely. Like I'm not trying to say that. I like kind of feeling like there was some sort of okay, closure there. Like we
Yes.
Some sort of
ultimately
understanding.
got
Yeah.
something there is ideal. And
Well,
then you can move on.
I
And
think
it's not also well, one last thing, it's not also like one spot. Like I could be talking about a group of 5 different units. I could be
right.
talking about 20 counties. I could be talking about one roadblock. I mean, it varies a lot,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, I'm kind of addicted to like whatever in my mind is an area that I want to figure out.
One of the things I've been working on is I'm very much drawn to areas and landscapes, like particular
Hmm.
ones, like very, very much so, where it's like some of them I just have like zero interest.
Yep.
Um, eh, I think I have some level of interest in all hunting everywhere, right? Like, but it's just like,
Yeah.
and I'll do it all, like, but it's like some things I really get fired up about, and I'm realizing that, and even sometimes it's like, hey, like the deer in that area may not be quite as big, but that's okay because where they live is so cool, and they're just like, their habits are, the landscape's different. So I want to learn and experience that. But the one thing I've really been working on, I think lately, and I'm even starting to shift some of my stuff at home too, is like, just like you said, not getting caught up in just like, I don't know what you want to call it, stagnant with a spot, like with a certain thing. I mean, for me at home, I'll always probably hunt here because I live here and it's close by. And it's something that I can do with, I have a day or an afternoon, but like where I'm traveling to, I just don't like, I want to experience new things and new areas. So that's one thing I've been working on, because I feel like it's so easy to get caught up doing, I know you're the same way, but caught up doing the same thing over and over, year after year, and then you look up and it's been like 15 years. Like, damn, like I just spent 15 straight Novembers doing the same thing. Like,
which it's addicting. I mean, there's obviously everybody's gonna have their areas that are kind of like their home, kind of their wherever they resort back to, and it may not even be for a good reason. Like the places that I like aren't. I mean, my favorite places ever are not good places to hunt. I know that that's probably not what people, listening probably think, but they're not. And I've spent so many days that never make the cut, and probably will at some point when I, find a good way to put it all together, which might be, a retirement, not retirement, but like an old man project.
Yeah.
But like, there's certain. I mean, we've talked about this as a group. There's these areas, all of us and THP and all my friends. I mean, you guys, my friends over at Just Hunt Club as well do, where it's like, we all do this thing where we kind of have our own little mini challenges, something we're, or an area that we're targeting, or whatever, whatever you want to call it, like this certain storyline in your own head, and it's not always necessarily what even your buddies are seeing, right? Like they know you kind of got that thing going on, like, oh, John's been hunting that one spot, I know that one spot where he missed a bunch of bucks, it's like I know he's got that going, but he's got so many other things going too that I don't probably know fully about. And I just think that that's kind of just something that's really,
I think,
fun. It's fun to be able to do, and I feel extremely lucky to just be able to do that, because it's definitely my favorite thing is exploring.
When you do get stuck too, it's so easy, because what happens is you become successful, and you're like, oh, I cracked the code, and then you start having, you're just like, and it's like addicting, and it's like, oh, like pile it on, I got it now. And then all of a sudden you can be like, all right, like it's time to challenge myself and try to do something else, because then you're never going to grow, and you're never going to have new experiences. That's my biggest.
And then and then when you go do the next challenge, you think, oh, I got this in the bag. I learned so much over here that I can apply here or whatever. I'm always doing that. As soon as you go over there to the new thing, it's like, oh, wait. No, it wasn't that easy, actually. Like there's a ton of examples, or ton of things that I don't know about this exact area or habitat. And I think generally speaking too, it's habitat, right? Like there's certain habitat and terrain, that combination, because there's a lot of places that I think in my mind I'm hunting big woods, but big woods does have its own look in every area where people say they got big woods, right? It's that's fun too. And then,
do you want to talk a little bit about like the difference in the animals across these? Because like whether you're talking about elk or mule deer, or probably we have most experience with whitetails, is like that's the thing that fascinates me the most, and I think yours probably as qualified to talk about as anybody, because of like you've hunted. I mean, how many? I don't know. I'm not going to ask how many states you've been to for whitetails, but I bet it's a lot. I bet it's almost most of them.
Hopefully someday that's kind of the slow goal.
Is it?
At some point it'd be. I mean, I think it would be cool to just say that I've at least hunted in all, all states, and um, at least made some sort of attempt. I'm sure I'll never get, there's no expectation of shooting any
Yeah.
a deer in all these places, but even filming there is
Yeah.
an
Right.
experience that
Yeah.
I consider I hunted there, because that's what also makes all this unique. Like, it doesn't really matter to me area wise if it's me shooting or somebody else. If I'm a part of the
Yeah.
plan, it's pretty I don't know, pretty special either way. But anyway, you're talking about
Yeah.
the animals.
What's
I think
what's
that's a
your
pretty
like? What are some
interesting.
things that jumped out? Like, what are some things that amazed you or surprised you? Because I'm telling you, I've been in some that aren't that far apart geographically and like look really similar, but like just totally different. Like food
Mhm.
sources, movement, like the whole thing. It's like, and that fascinates me honestly. Like I'm like, what is
Mhm.
going on here that makes this such a different deal? Like, has there been, or maybe I'm overthinking it, and maybe they're more similar than I
No,
think. Or
no.
I'm just curious as to what your take on that is, and if you had
Once
any.
we open this can of worms, I'm sure I'll just be able to keep thinking of different ideas.
Yeah.
Um, I think one thing that really plays a big part in it is kind of the habitat that animals live in. So, like, how does their ability to get a visual change? And
Mm-hmm.
then also, how does their ability to hear you change? Because I think, deer act different when they kind of are conditioned a certain way. Um, like, for example, you take a deer in dry leaves that are really crunchy and it's really calm.
Yeah.
They're going to use that to their advantage. And a deer that lives in the plains,
Right.
that's living in, a more grassy landscape, may not ever hear rustling or hardly at
Right.
all. Where that deer in the timber with the crunchy leaves, they might be able to hear a hunter walking in from, I mean, maybe a half mile at
Yeah.
certain times. I mean, it's pretty weird how much little details like that can change, and then also the visual aspect. Because, like, on the flip side, that deer that's in the timber is sometimes you're like, what's wrong with you? Like, why don't you see me? But then you take the deer that's in the plains, and it's like, you give him one of these. It's like, you're busted. It's like, but you didn't even get your eyes up. You're just here, and it's like they're already standing there looking
Yeah.
at you. And it's like, I don't know, man. So,
Yeah.
that's one thing, like, kind of a basic comparison. And then, like, one thing that's really stood out to me is, I don't know, because it can vary so much even within the species, but people have said, and I've said it, oh, mule deer, man, they're they're just not the same as whitetail. Whitetail are way spookier, but in my experience, stalking a bedded mule deer versus a whitetail that's bedded, I'm taking the bedded
Oh,
whitetail.
really?
As far as,
You,
like, if what do I
yeah.
what am I going to put my money on, like, shooting and getting,
Yeah.
getting him? The whitetail. And the reason is I think whitetails are so much more aggressive that it actually, like, hurts them in that
Mm.
final moment. Like, they constantly are just like, well, who's here to bother me? And they live generally in places where,
Yeah.
they can't see very far, or a lot of times they do. And so, but even in an open setting, it's way different. Like, you hunt a whitetail in the plains in the same county, the same day as uh, a whitetail is a mule deer in the plains. The whitetail are way more likely to kind of give you that look of like, huh? Like,
Mm.
are you here to fight me? Especially a buck.
Yeah.
Does whatever, but bucks, I feel that's one major difference is they can act, I don't know, pretty aggressive to the point that it hurts them. And then just like watching a plains deer in general versus a timber deer, I mean, that is the most basic one to compare, but it's fascinating. I can go and elaborate on a lot more, I'm sure, but just for the sake of.
Yeah. One of the things that amazed me, well, it still does, it still just doesn't. It's tough from where I came from to understand is these, plains or western whitetails that like bed in like nothing. Like you're like,
Oh, the wide
there's
open.
no way. Like no, a deer, like a fawn wouldn't live there. Like and they come out of like something, and you're like, I didn't even know that could hide a deer, and they're bedded there.
Yes.
And then their willingness to get up and just walk 2 miles in the freaking broad daylight across like the wide open, and I'm like, what the? Where it's like a deer at home, I'm like, they would never even like they wouldn't even do the Zach stick up and look at in that opening. Never mind, just.
But do you ever think though, on the flip side, that like maybe that's just what we believe because we can't see it, and like obviously there's things like cameras to like, kind of convince you otherwise, but certainly there's times where they make these huge moves and we have no idea,
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the huge moves I can believe it's just across the open. I know they don't do it there because there really isn't any open, of course, right? But
that's true.
But I mean, you just have these little. You do have some, like a power line or a swamp or maybe a field or whatever it is, big open cut. But like, yeah, it's just like it seems like the deer in timber country just avoid those big openings, like during daylight.
That makes sense.
Because they have the option. It's like in places where, say like near Hanson's, for example, where it's like 20% timber,
right,
and the other 80%, like they really don't have a choice. If there's so many deer concentrated in this one little block and something bad happens there, it's like they gotta they gotta go. So
the thing go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I think talking about the open. Going across the open, anywhere where you're talking like some broken field country, it's not as likely to happen. And when you say it, like going across a cut or something like that, that makes a lot more sense. And I agree. It's like the distance, yes, where they're doing it.
Yeah.
But
that's what I mean.
Like you said, those deer in the open country, sometimes they don't have it. But one thing that I think is crazy about those deer sometimes is their ability to like follow that low ground, and they know where you can see them,
and they disappear. And you're like, what?
Dude, how did you disappear?
Like, what is even there? And you're like looking, and then like, you walk in, there's like a 4 foot elevation change, and like a little bit, and they're just freaking gone up some other, ravine or drainage. But no, it's wild just to see the difference in them. And that's kind of why I like hunting. And I'd see it even in timber country. Like I definitely see big differences on how. Like it depends on like if you're in like a national forest or a state forest that like isn't logged and it's all open. I feel like it's like wide open, lots of wide open timber. They act so different than deer that are in like heavy, thick cut forests. Like even just like those deer in the wide open bed with, I think visual is like the number one thing. Like I'm sure they use the wind to their advantage, but I think their eyes are the number one, where it's like a deer that's in thick, he can't really use his eyes. He's using his ear and his nose more than anything. So it's just interesting.
No, that was so one thing that took me a lot of time to recognize going from hunting in Iowa for those years, mostly hunting in Iowa those years, where it's really thick and deer bed, and can't see anything. I had gotten really accustomed to just going like uncomfortably close to them, kind of assuming, okay, they're bedding in here because of sign that I'd found or whatever. I would just push all the way up to that edge, and I feel like, the whole idea of just like, I guess, stalking a bed or bedding area, like that's what I liked to do there, because it was, looking back on it, it was much easier to do. I didn't totally recognize how different that was. And it took me a little bit of time when I went back and started hunting in like Ohio, for example. When I was bow hunting there, I remember being like, what the hell? Like, just spooking deer from forever away. And like, I know that I can be quiet enough to not spook deer, but I wasn't fully recognizing how the deer were bedding and just, using where their location was to their advantage, and condition wise too, right? Like you get a crunchy day, and I'm a firm believer that if you're in timber on a crunchy day near deer, if you can get up high, you can see a shit ton, and it's crunchy on top of it, and you got wind coming over your back. Like, how would you ever get beat?
Yeah.
You're gonna hear people,
Yeah.
any predator coming from forever away,
Yeah.
unless you're just,
Sleep.
sleeping hard. But even then,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah.
But it took time it took time for me to even realize that. I guess I guess I was realizing that it was happening, but I wasn't necessarily realizing why, it was working over here. I couldn't always find the words to describe what was going on, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One thing I'll ask you about, it's right in line with this, and I'm still like, I thought I figured it out, or not figured it out. That's
Thought you had an opinion on it.
Yeah, not figured it out.
Thought you had a theory. Thought you had a theory.
Yeah, I had a theory. Is I always had, and still kind of to an extent, but I don't think this is a rule, but it seems to me like in timber country, which I know you hunt a lot of, that bucks, well, deer, but bucks in particular, I don't think they like to bed inside of cuts. I think they like to bed on the edge with some open component if they can. Would you agree with that, or do you see deer, bucks bedding like because I hear people say that.
What age of cut are you talking about?
Anything that can hide them. It depends where you're at and how fast the regen is, but it could be 2 to 10, 12, 15 years depending on where you're at. But but I say that, but then I hear of people literally actually I talked to some guys here in the Northeast, and they had a drone, and they said that they were finding a ton of big bucks bedded in the middle of cuts in October. They were doing some other work. They weren't looking for deer. They were doing some other drone stuff work. And I was like, he's like, yeah, right. I'm like, inside. I'm like, right. And he's like, yeah, like right in the middle. And he's like, multiple. He's like, I'm like, really? So it was interesting to me. And so, and then you see these deer sometimes in timber country. And I just think, in my opinion, like the white antlers is like, they got to be bedded in the sun, like often. And I feel like timber deer, particularly if you have conifers, I think sometimes if it's all hardwoods and it's late season, you're getting a lot of sun even in the timber. But particularly here where we don't have a lot of sun hitting the floor even when the leaves are off because we have the conifers. But I see deer sometimes with white antlers in this country, and it's like, well, he's been in the open a lot. Like, where has he been in the open? And then my mind goes to, is he laying in a cut? Maybe. So I don't know. That's one thing that I've been kind of going back and forth on, and
That's interesting.
I just can't.
I haven't thought about it like that.
I don't know.
I know we've talked about the white antler thing. I definitely can buy into that theory. Not to breeze over that, because that's definitely not something you hear a lot of people talk about, and I probably take it for granted because we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
But I think that I believe in that. I can get behind that theory. It'd be interesting to find a way to actually, study that a little bit closer. The one example I have though of bedding in the clear cut was when I was hunting Pennsylvania in 2020. Well, you were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we were there, we were hunting that clear cut. It wasn't totally a clear cut. It was a select cut. And I guess to the October thing, it's the only reason I even bring that up. It's like that was in October.
Right.
The sign in there was insane. It was just obliterated.
That was pretty thick. That's some of that cut was definitely getting. I don't know.
It was pretty thick. I think the one thing about it was the roads were still pretty walkable.
Was this the place that you shot that buck at 3 yards?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I guess in the October woods, the one advantage that they have to bed there is it is the time where you would be more likely to just be completely concealed, have that sort of cover like this, because I have noticed, pretty quickly there's a lot of cuts that get this density to them where you wouldn't be as likely to do the old hold tight type of bedding practice when the leaves are off. But you could do it. I mean, you could lay there in the middle of a cut and have hunters walking all around you if you're a buck.
Yeah.
I mean, you could hear them, smell them, and just hang tight. You could do that in October where, you know, November on, we start losing those leaves pretty rapidly. It's like, especially by December, January, like you're gonna really have a hard time hiding in there if you're a deer. But I think, I guess it just, when we talk about like certain bedding habits, it's interesting because not only do you have to think about like leaves, like what we're talking about right now, but I mean, day to day. You take a calm day, for example, and if I'm a deer, I'm going straight into the thick
Yeah.
patch, right? Where I
Nothing's
can just
getting at
hide
you.
in there. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I just said a second ago, you lay there up high where you can see a bunch. It's like
Yeah.
you have your advantages to it in a lot of different situations. I guess one thing that kind of skipping around here in a little bit, just all over, but I've had this new theory recently of like if it's raining, they're gonna bed in the open, and I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that. Like, I just started kind of putting a bunch of examples together in my head, and I'm like, damn, I'm seeing them in things like clear cuts, or like, and this goes tons of different states, like clear cuts, reclaimed areas, just being out in the obviously in the plains, there's
Yeah.
their own limitations out there, but even like rainy days when I'm elk hunting. What else? There was another example. Oh, just like river bottom, like in Iowa
Yeah.
type stuff
Yeah.
that we would hunt a lot. Where you weren't seeing them all, like looking back, it's like weren't seeing them in these open
Mm-hmm.
areas, clear cuts, all these different things. Weren't seeing them there, and then all of a sudden, boom, there he is.
Yeah.
Especially when they're like way more visible, bedded when they're with does. It's like if it's raining, it seems like for whatever reason, and I guess one of my theories on that was just, if you're in the woods and it's raining hard, a lot of times you're just getting those big drops coming off the trees.
Yeah.
If you're out in the open, especially like, okay, let's put it this way, not just raining, like misty rain, like
Okay.
just real
Yeah.
light, like, foggy type rain. It seems like to me they get out of where it's going to be dripping on them hard, and they get out in those open areas a little bit more. And
I,
that's kind of been something I haven't really talked about. I ain't really said that to a lot of people yet, and
I
it
won't
means
tell
I'm trying
anybody,
not to
Zach.
sound crazy, but it does kind of seem like it's something that I've been seeing. Maybe I'm just crazy.
Maybe you've been editing. No, I think the other thing that could be a play is they lose their ears in those situations
Hmm.
too. So they're relying more on their eyes. So they want,
Hmm.
and maybe, yeah. So that may be another factor.
Do you think, on that same note about the ears, do you think the same thing applies in like a steady wind situation where you start getting above like 10 miles an hour?
That's a good question because that would be a similar
Yes.
situation. Yeah.
Yes, I do. I mean, buck that we shot in Nebraska in 2017, I've always told the story the same, the same exact way, because it's exactly like what it would lead you, at least led me to believe this is why he did what he did. We got up in a stand before daylight, heard him move right at, daylight or just before or just after, whatever. He went and bedded out in the middle of the thick stuff. And then it was real calm. And it was like 8 o'clock. The wind was forecasted to pick up, or it had been doing that every day, whatever. There was like
Yeah.
a specific time that we were expecting the wind to pick up. Boom, it picked up as soon as it did. I mean, it wasn't like a minute later. He was up, made a rub, and just circled right into
Yeah.
to our setup, and that was the edge of where he was going to be able to see
Mm-hmm.
out that way. If we had the wind in our face, and he was going to lay there with the thick to his back, wind coming out of that, and he was going to lay there and watch that edge where he could see all the way to the road. And it's just, I mean, to me, like that bed shift, that little, I mean, and it might be as micro as he stands up and he moves 3 yards, but I'm a firm believer that every deer, when the wind changes like abruptly, and it's like the
Yeah.
first little gust of the morning breeze or whatever, like he thinks about it.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I've watched many a deer in the plains react to it, and it's so consistent that,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to simplify hunting in terrain, always think leeward side. That's the only place, especially on a windy day, that's the only place they are that day is like where they're not just getting hammered by that
Yeah.
wind. It's like, to me, now granted, there's certain areas you guys know where the mountains are big enough that it's like, well, I can never get on the leeward
Right.
side,
Yeah.
but I'm not
In general.
saying,
Yeah.
but still, there's certain little things you can find to get out of the wind. And I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's so consistent when you can see deer. Like, I mean, I've watched deer run out of their beds when the wind picks up to go
Yeah.
get, into like the leeward side where they can lay there and have it come over the top. It's just like super consistent.
Makes sense. I
In what
mean,
I've seen.
I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, they want to survive, and I think the and I'm sure they do this as well, but like I think what you're talking about, those little micro shifts that may only be like 10, 15, maybe they're 80 yards, whatever. I think those
Maybe
are
they're
probably more
3.
common than like what's that?
I said maybe they're 3 yards
Yeah,
though
yeah,
too,
yeah.
like
I
I think
think
that probably happens a lot more than we realize too. But
yeah.
anyway,
I don't know that they, and maybe they do. I don't know that I've seen the evidence. Maybe you have, that they're making like, oh shit, I gotta go to the other side of this mountain at like 10 in the morning because it's like they're not. I feel like they're not gonna walk
No.
like 3/4 of a mile to go. Well, it's just like, well, they'll make a little slight change to make that pocket work for them, or maybe just bump over to another pocket that's close by. So yeah,
I think sometimes they'll do it
effectively,
like in
it might not
relation
even,
to
in your
a
head,
knob.
it's not even a bedding. It's not even really much of a change because they're still in the same bedding area, in the same area that you
Right.
expect them to be,
Yeah, like your area and risk of bumping them didn't change.
Right.
Like that's how
Yes.
I kind of
Yes.
think of it. Is like
Yes.
the risk of bumping them. It like, I mean, it's very minimal, and it maybe does help you. I mean, I'm sure there's days that we go hunting where it's like we're about rolling in there in the afternoon. I mean, all of us. This is every hunter in
Yeah.
the country is like we roll out there and we think, man, it's gonna be a great day, and we get super lucky that buck gets up and just happens to move just out of sight of where we're walking, and then we go set up, and then he comes right through there, all because
Yeah.
there was this pure luck thing that we had no idea how to predict happen. Or
I,
maybe he just moved, I mean, 5 yards, got behind a log and can't see you. I mean, there's tons of things that happen like that. I'm sure there has to be, right? And
yeah.
and I just think that yeah, like to your point about moving across the mountain, it's like mountains like, thinking the biggest scale, like, he's gonna have to walk a mile to get to the top and go up and
Right.
over. It's like,
Right.
no, I don't think in that type of example he probably does. But hunting, you get this in a lot of the country. We get these knobs,
Yep.
and deer bed up on high
Yep.
knobs,
Yep.
and they can, there can be a peak up here
Yep.
that's, let's say this peaks at, I don't know, 1,700 feet,
Yep.
and this little peak down here is at 13.
Yep.
It's like that's still the same thing. I'm
Yep.
not exclusively talking the high,
Right.
highest
I would
peak,
agree with
highest
that. Yeah.
knob, but like they do seem to tend to like make moves around that
Yeah.
based off of wind,
And I
where
think some of it's
or cover
Yep.
too. Like
Well-
it sometimes is limited by cover, which makes it, even more unique. But if you got a same type of cover all around the top,
yes.
like let's say you've got a high knob that's been burnt,
Yep.
like just a natural wildfire. So it's just kind of thicker than hell in the whole thing. Well, there I think he just will
Bingo.
use the
Yes.
wind 100%.
Yeah.
But in some situations he may only have that on one side, and then he angles it ever so slightly different.
In my
I
mind,
think those are a couple.
in my mind, he's probably willing to shift and go as far as he can without taking a risk of like being in the open or putting himself in a compromised position while traveling, right? So if he can stay within the cover, or stay on that high ground where he has the advantage and he's still up and can look at everything and he can make that shift, then I can see it. But like I said, I don't think he's like going to come off this and go across like an big open area and bet. No, probably not doing that, right? So,
No.
yeah.
No, and I think that's one thing that like I used to hear guys say like, oh, I'm hunting the bed shift, and I'd think like, oh, you're gonna like hunt them going from ridge to ridge, or like that just seems crazy. Like I don't
Yeah.
necessarily believe in that, and even if that is what people are doing, I'm more open to believing in it now because I feel like there's just the more I see that everything you can make these predictions, and I guess I did want to point this out. You can make these predictions. Like hell, I think there's times they just stand up and like I'm going over there,
Yeah.
and they're not thinking about it at all. I mean,
For sure.
we can absolutely give them too much credit, right?
sure.
So like anyone listening is like, dude, these guys are nuts. They're like thinking about this way too much. It's not that serious. It isn't, but it's fun to think about. But anyhow, like I used to be really confused by that, and now I think, at least in my way of trying to break down a bed shift, I'm thinking of it smaller scale than
Yep.
what I used to. I would just hear guys kind of just throw that term out there, and I didn't really know what that meant. Like, how far are you expecting him to go? And I wish I could help people that like I wish I could go back and help myself then, but it really just takes time out there to really make your own
Yeah.
judgment on that. That's what I think,
I think
because every
also,
situation's different.
yeah. And I think there's probably some areas of the country, I would say probably areas with very limited cover, where a buck actually may lay in one bed all day. Like literally, like
Hmm.
he may stand up, but he gets back and he's in that bed all day long. But I would say probably it's more likely that bucks are standing up and moving throughout the day, regardless of wind shifts, just to reposition, maybe get out of the sun, maybe get in the sun, or just to browse. So like, I think there's varying degrees of that. If they have the ability to do that and stay safe within a secluded pocket, I think they probably do it all day. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it if you watch bedded bucks get up and down,
Oh
move,
yeah.
like, the whole thing.
Oh yeah. No, I mean I would say I'd say 3 hours is like max
Yeah,
that I've ever even seen one bed. I mean it's one of those deals like I think when you're stalking deer bedded, there's always a battle of like, well, you don't want to sit here and think about it too long. Like,
yeah, you're gonna
yeah,
run
you
out
want
of
to make
time.
sure you got a plan, but if you
Yeah,
wait too long, I mean, a lot of times they bed down and they'll stand right back up. They're like, I don't like it. I
yeah.
mean, wouldn't you? Right? Didn't you
Oh,
do
for
that
sure.
sometimes?
Yeah,
Like I know you guys know, but I mean, it's like think about you think about certain parts of this, it's like it's still an animal. It's still trying to seek comfort, right?
hmm
Like it wants to be comfortable. It wants to be um, in a situation where it can use all its defenses for to the best of its ability for those conditions, I think. And there's a lot of times, yeah, they just aren't there for that long. And it may not be massive change, but it might also be 80 yards. It might also be 400. I've seen it too,
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
we don't always know.
No,
I
no,
think
for
it's
sure.
just
No.
looking at, I think the biggest thing though is getting out there. Like this is what you were saying at the beginning about your area. You get out there and you look at the places that you're going to hunt as many times as you can. You can do this in season. You can do this on the fly in season. You can do it before season, and you can do it, you know, in
Yeah.
turkey season. You can do it all year, just sporadically. But when you go out there, I think the way to try to figure this out in your area, or a lot of these things, is like just sit there and like really think about why when you see certain sign, is it here because of terrain? Is it here because of cover? Is it here because of food source? Or is it all of the above? And I think the more often you're doing that and you're kind of challenging yourself to think about like what would a deer do in this situation, then the more likely you are to be able to intercept them, in those areas when you know,
hmm
are actually in there hunting, like take advantage of those little changes. Like for example, if you're sitting there, you're looking at a bed on one side of the ridge. You're like, oh man, it would make sense for him to be here on a north wind. You're kind of like,
Yeah.
Yeah, this would make sense. And you make your setup, you make a plan for a north wind, but then you work on the other side of the ridge, and you're like, oh, this works well for him on a south wind, but it's only 40 yards over there, and I
Right.
took a like sweet trail with rubs from bed to bed. There's two little cover
Yeah.
pockets of cover. There's a trail connecting them with rubs. Well, then maybe on that day that the wind does do a 180,
Right.
maybe you're sitting on that trail.
Yep.
Those are the types of little details that um, I think you only know if you're out there because, like, I mean, I'm super guilty of it, right? Like, I try everywhere I hunt is not like right at home. I don't have
Yeah.
anywhere that I'm like hunting that's like 15 minutes away. So I map cruise all the time. I'm
Yeah.
over here, then I'm over here. I mean, who knows how many states I'll be in by the time I go to sleep tonight, just map scouting. And so, I mean, it's ridiculous, but I do that. And obviously, there's certain things you can pick up on that help you learn the lay of the land in that way. But ultimately, you hit a point where you're like, okay, I know I just got to be out
Yep.
there. I know it's time. It's time to go because I'm going insane wandering now. Like these spots could be good, but I
Yeah, it's
don't know
like
that till I get
you
out
stare
there.
at that area and that landscape and that map long enough, like, all right, I got questions and I need to go.
Yeah,
I need to
exactly.
go there to get the answers. There's no more answers on the screen for me here.
Yep.
Oh
Yep. And
yeah,
I feel like if you yeah, I guess just take advantage of that. And like, I mean, I've even started like cutting time out of I don't know, like turkey hunts to think about stuff a little bit more. I'm not saying like I'm not turkey hunting. I'm just saying like if I'm out there, and I'm not in a major rush right at the moment, yeah, I'm gonna stand there and I'm gonna think about deer sign. I'm gonna sit
yeah,
there and think about turkey sign too, just the same, but like I'm not just gonna shut my brain off to one or the other, just because I'm not actively chasing that. And that goes for elk,
yeah,
pronghorn, turkey. I mean, anything that I hunt. If I see its sign, I'm thinking deeply. But I mean, I do it for bear, and I'm not like I get bear tags, but I'm obviously not a serious bear
yeah,
hunter. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like, but I do that with all animals because I find it fun to try to figure out. But
No, I just think it's so interesting how they interact with their environment so differently, and that's like there's just little intangibles that like you just don't know until you've been there and experienced it. And I think it's just fascinating. And I honestly think that the better you are at recognizing those in new landscapes, the quicker you're going to be successful. Like that, because those are the little things that like kind of put you over the edge. Is those little intangible
absolutely.
things that are like, I'll call
Oh,
them
you're
like
hung up on
micro
them.
differences between this type of landscape and this deer in this spot and then maybe one in the next state or the next county or whatever. When you can figure those things out, and it may not be a big thing, it may be a scale thing. A lot of times it is a scale thing, right? Scale's huge.
Hmm.
That's one of the biggest things I think we've talked about in the past is getting the
Hmm.
scale of the landscape, the movement, everything, food sources. Because there's some areas where like a little dinky food source just isn't going to move the needle, right? But there's
Yep.
other areas where that same little dinky food source moves it in a big way. And just being
Hmm.
able to quickly go and evaluate what you're looking at. I mean, there's
When it can
just so
change year
much to
from
that.
year to year,
Yep.
like one year, for example, I mean, I kind of talk about it. I feel like we didn't even do that well that season. I think Ben shot a buck, but it wasn't necessarily related to this that we knew of. But Ben shot a buck during bow season. But it was the season that we had. No, no, that's stupid. We did end up shooting one with a gun too. All 100% based off this. But it was like the dream season. It's scarlet oaks that were
Yep.
dropping acorns like
Yeah.
crazy. And I've never to this day seen anything like it. Every single time we'd come up to one of those trees, the deer would have the ground like completely
Yeah.
turned over. And I've never seen another acorn crop. And I'm not just talking scarlet oak. I'm talking,
Oaks.
and that was in
Period.
multiple states we
Yeah.
saw that. I mean, we saw that when we were in Georgia too. So way down south, but it was the same thing down there. Every time we'd come across those things and they were dropping acorns, I mean, they would just be completely rolled over. And that was interesting because year to year, you're talking about moving the needle. It's like, well, the one year it was moving the needle like crazy. The other year, it's like, well, this doesn't even matter.
I
It
know.
literally does not matter at all, to the
Yes.
point where we wasted time
Yep.
years after in the same areas because they're just
Yeah.
not there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other
So,
thing, that it's even hard to tell if you are familiar with that area,
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
it's a challenge, but the quicker I think, paying attention to those details, and then the quicker you can evaluate that and make some sort of assumption that's hopefully accurate. Like you just jump forward
hmm
and further and further forward.
Can I
And
give you one more example here? This is one that is interesting, and it kind of relates back to, the big woods type stuff. So I use the example of hunting thick ground in Iowa.
yep,
Then I go to, the east, and I'm hunting more open timber again, and having to kind of relearn that
yep,
scale, kind of the danger zone of where to spook deer. Well, I've been hunting this river bottom the last couple of seasons, and the thing that's extremely frustrating about it is I can see the things when they get up and start moving. Like I can get up on these high points, or you
yeah,
get up there's not a lot of trees, but you get up in one, and you can see the deer moving around really well. Like evening, the last 30 minutes, you're gonna see just tons of deer, and you're probably gonna see a buck. The problem that I'm having though is like the movement patterns are pretty consistent, but once they get in the thick stuff, like how you get, like, how you, I guess my point is how do you see the things when you're actually in there? Because I see
yeah,
them when I'm up high, and I'm doing this big scale observation, but once I get down in there, it's like everything changes, and it is this to
yeah.
the max. Like I'm talking like probably the thickest stuff I've ever bow hunted in my life, as far as
That's
like
tough. Yeah,
stem count goes. You can still maneuver through it if you're patient
yeah,
and be pretty quiet. I mean, it's a lot of like willows and cottonwoods,
yeah,
and just like real young though.
yeah,
And like it's an area, this river bottom, like a lot of river bottoms, gets flooded. So that's the other thing, is like year to year, it's kind of a toss up of like, well, hopefully
yeah,
it's somewhat the same,
yeah.
and your high ground, low ground stays generally consistent, but what's growing there and how those food sources are going
hmm
to change is going to vary based off water levels. And so the thing that I feel that I just had a light bulb moment of is this winter I was scouting, and I was like, man, like this doesn't make any sense, right? Like I always see the deer when I get in my observation spots. I get down in here and I never see the deer. I see tons of sign. Like there are deer in here.
hmm
I know I'm hunting in the right types of spots, but what am I missing? Like why can't I quite, and I've had some close calls there, but not consistent, not as like much as I think I should be, right? Like, I'm just having a lot of dead hunts when I go in there and I like get in a spot and set up. And so I was like, why do I see them? See all this sign, get in there, whatever. And it's like, am I being there too aggressive? Am I being too timid? And a lot of times for the last couple seasons, I've thought I'm being too aggressive. That's just that's what everybody tells me I'm doing, right? You're spooking all the deer. So I was scouting around though, and I'm like, bullshit, man. I can't be too aggressive. I never spook them. I like rarely ever hear them,
yeah,
right? Like I rarely hear a deer run. And so like being super cautious moving through that stuff, being real patient with it, getting there super early, whatever, I feel that that's probably a good thing. But then as far as like pushing that last little extra bit, I'm not necessarily doing that. And so when I was scouting, I've been going through all these areas that I really like and I think are good travel corridors, for example, or, feeding areas. So kind of the final destination in
yeah,
the evening, and then kind of where they're coming back through, and then looking at those traveling areas in between. I think I was putting a bunch of those together. It's like, okay, man, I'm figuring it out. But then it's still like I'm not always spooking the deer. Like, why am I not spooking deer? And so I started just being more aggressive in my scouting and just basically trying to like get into the weirdest, thickest spots that I
yeah,
could. And what I learned is I'd been playing it too much like I'd been playing the open timber. It's like I'm hanging back, I'm trying to be patient, I'm playing it safe, and I'm not being aggressive enough. And what I really need to do is take advantage of the fact that these things are laying,
Yeah.
with a complete wall in their face. I mean, as soon as they lay down, they can, guys, I'm not kidding, you can't see a foot.
Yeah.
So here I am tiptoeing, even 150 yards away from
Yeah.
them. Big old buck, eh, he probably isn't moving all that much unless he's, looking for does. But even then, it's like I just need to take everything and like pack it down tighter into these more aggressive areas. And like I've been playing let's describe it like this. It's like if you're hunting in open country, or not open country, farm country, like where I grew up is what I have in mind,
Yeah.
like real small woodlots. You're the guy sitting on the fence line in between the two patches of timber, where the guys that are like, in the
Yeah.
actual bedding areas, they're
Yeah.
having more consistent action.
Yep.
You have a chance at getting one, and that's not to say fence row's a bad spot.
Yeah.
By all means, in the rut, that's a good
Yeah.
spot. But I've always exclusively been hunting like the fence row, and now I feel
Yeah.
like I'm ready to get into the bedding area just because I actually got aggressive enough in my scouting to realize, they are actually bedding in these places that are just a hair deeper than what I thought. And that helped me a lot, I think. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I
And
feel like it's pretty long-winded per usual, but like I just was playing it, yeah. I got too afraid of crunchy leaves is really what it comes down to. And then I'm like, I'm not in that anymore. I got to switch it up.
how
So
much too
that's
do
a
you
big
think,
lesson.
like, I swear sometimes deer, like in your head, you're like, oh, that sound's going to spook a deer. Or, like that leaf, oh, they're gone. Like, but then you like literally watch deer bedded or like in front of you, and like here comes something crunching up on them, and they're like just completely ignore it until it's like right on top of them. And they're just like, and then they don't even run, and they may run, and it's like, oh man, maybe I have a little more forgiveness than I think with this type of stuff. Or even like I've had stuff where I make a sound in the tree or like clank something, and it's like they don't even like the ear. It's like that, and that's it. Like you're like,
Yep.
So I think a lot of times, I mean, they're hearing stuff all the time. I mean, obviously, the distinct crunch, consistent. Like, yeah, it's going to get there. But I mean, a little bit of noise. I just don't know if that's
one thing.
Unless you're in their bubble. If you're really close, sure. But like outside of it,
but even then,
stuff
dude,
all the time.
even then, I think what you just said is really my opinion as well. Like, as long as it's not crunch, like 1, 2,
Right.
1, 2, 1, 2, which that's how we all walk. I think as long as you're mixing that up, I mean, I'll get into a spot, dude, and okay, for example, I know that we were set up, and this is the same area. We were set up on a buck that he's locked down with the doe. Didn't necessarily know that he was right as close as he actually was. Turns out he pretty much appeared to be about 40 yards away from where we were. Bedded with this doe. Didn't know it at the time. Figured we were close, or you hoped we were close,
Yeah.
but weren't positive on that. But man, I get in there and just like straight breaking like dead twigs that are like making sound,
Yeah.
like pop.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, but then I mix it up too. Like, maybe you grunt a little bit when you're doing that, or maybe you scrape the ground, trying not to make things sound exactly like a human, I think is the number one thing. But to your point too, like you clank and you get away with it, that's not a natural sound, but sometimes they're just doing enough that they're preoccupied and they don't hear it. I think that, a bedded deer, it depends on what it can and cannot see. You get the deer that's in the wall of cover, and if even it stands up, it can only see 10, 15, 20 yards or whatever. I just don't think those deer bust. And I think people say like, oh, they hold tight. And I guess I've always interpreted that as like they're holding tight because they know you're there. It's like
Right.
sometimes they're holding tight because they don't know that you're a human.
Right.
Like you're walking up in the cattails,
Yeah.
and you're kind of stumbling around. You stumble, and and you're not like almost accidentally even. Let's say you're driving, you're doing a drive, and you're through the cattails. You're driver through the cattails, whatever. and you're splashing your way along, you're struggling. Maybe you're accidentally not sounding like a person, and all of a sudden you kind of sound like a buck. You're going, I mean,
Yeah.
who's to say he's not laying there just like, well, who's coming in on me? Like,
Yeah.
what other buck's about to walk in? And then here it comes Bubby One with the,
Yeah.
blaze orange on and a pump shotgun or
Yeah.
something.
Well, think about too, is you're in the woods and you're listening, you can hear sounds. And oftentimes I think we're just hearing, they come across as ambient noise often. Like that's what we're interpreting them as. And then we can hear distinct sounds, which you may be, once again, like that deer puts his ear up. What is that?
Yeah.
But then it's like almost sometimes like you'll hear it, and then all of a sudden it comes over our eyes or it breaks in, and then it's like, holy that thing's right there. What? And then it's like has your attention. It's probably the same thing with the deer, and I really think until it's like that, really like boom right in your face. Now it's like I need to address this, and
I think
it may affect like if they're going to get up and walk somewhere and they hear a bunch of stuff going on. Yeah, maybe they won't go the other way if it's like continuous or consistent sound. But if they hear one or two things and it's like, so I think you have a lot more than we think.
Well, and I also just think that it's something that can be individual too, like, because I do believe it's something that can be learned. Like, how do you become a more efficient listener in the woods? Like, there's absolutely something you can improve upon there, right? Like, think about, for example, both y'all. Take you turkey hunting with a new guy, like it's us, and then we just get this new guy that you guys have never met, and he's over there going, the crow goes off, and he's like, hey, right when the crow goes, like, what time are you guys thinking about getting breakfast? It's just like, dude, like, what are you doing? Stop doing that, because we can't hear anything when you're moving around. And I do believe that, like, a big buck, for example, he's so experienced, so wise that he can stand there and recognize when it's advantageous to him to like break down the situation. I mean, I know, like, we've all had that experience of seeing a big buck not really do anything. Like, oh man, he just stood there for like 10 minutes. He didn't do anything. You time lapse that. This is where going back and watching, doing the editing, and it's like watching your film. You sit there and you watch a buck and he's just standing there. His ears are just doing this, and you time lapse that, and it's like he's not doing anything. There's sometimes they'll stand there and their eyes are almost not even open. They're just smelling and listening.
Yeah.
And it's like they're doing that at specific times. Like, if you watch deer move, they move with wind. Like, the wind picks up, that's when they take their steps. I mean, I've noticed even turkeys do that at times. And I mean, there's some people that probably listen to this and are like, dude, you're taking it too seriously. And it's like, I mean, yeah, I probably am. I mean, that's what I think about all the time, kind of, whether I'm doing it or like watching footage of it. You get to see these examples over and over again, and it's like, definitely doing something with that. And not every one, because again, that's individual. I do believe that there's a buck that's like the cautious buck, and there's the buck that's just he doesn't care. He's going to get the doe no matter what.
Yeah.
He's going to find that next doe, whether it's October 6th or it's, and it's a cold front day or not, or it don't matter. He's going.
Yeah.
There's deer that are like that, because I think just like anything, they're all individuals. I mean, the guys that have been, following specific deer, I mean, you being one of them, that as well as anybody. Like, they're all different.
Yep.
I don't get to experience them year to year or to get to really learn their personalities. I'm just hoping to be able to guess it in the moment. It's like,
that's right.
Hey, you come in all scarred up, and maybe I'll grunt to him. He's missing part of his ear, his ear's dangling, he's broken tines. I'll grunt to him.
Right.
And that stuff works too.
Oh, for sure.
Like in the heat of the moment, you can absolutely like kind of read a buck and be like, oh, this is what he is.
No, for
or
sure.
Hope what he is.
And I do wonder sometimes if, just like a turkey, it just depends on their mood, how they're feeling that day. You know what I mean? Like you could grunt to them one day and they're like, nah, I'm good.
Don't
And
even.
the next day they're like, oh yeah, I'm ready today. Like, let's do it. You know?
How about this? He's laying there. He's been laying there in the pouring rain all day. His bed's just
Yeah.
a puddle. And he's laying there, and all of a sudden he hears a grunt, and he's like, "I'll get up. What do I got to do? I'm tired of
Yeah.
laying in this bed." I mean,
Yeah.
maybe the last 10 days you did the same thing, at the same spot or whatever. I just think there's so much of that we're not supposed to even know. Like there's a level of it that's like, we can think about it and we can try to get it right. And I think if you want to, you should. Obviously, I'm
Yeah.
thinking about a bunch of weird stuff and little details. But like, what I mean by that is we're not supposed to know because like we're not them. Like we're not that species, but we can try to figure it out. But I do think that there's a lot of little things that, you know, and I guess with individuals, just like people, it's like, traveling to hunt, you see them travel, you see people too. You see these different types of people, and what kind of
Oh
ends
yeah.
up happening is you meet a lot of people that you kind of met before. I mean, you can experience that in just a small town,
Oh yeah.
even. Like, oh yeah, these guys are kind of the same.
Yeah.
This group's kind of the same. Whatever. They kind of act similar. But I feel like deer are kind of that way too.
Yep. No, for sure.
Big old broken tine buck. The reason that you feel confident grunting to them is because like you've seen the other ones that are like that be aggressive.
Pattern
Generally.
recognition. I think that's all IQ is, right? Being able to recognize patterns. It's just us being smart, man, and just trying to figure it out. I'm gonna pee super quick, and then I got another question I just was kind of thinking of as you were going off on that. So
yeah, I'll do the same thing real quick. All right, back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. One of the things I wanted to ask you. Now I know. So, I know you've tracked in New England or the Northeast in general. I think you got to do some tracking late season last year with a muzzleloader, right? And then have you done anything out west?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were you tracking deer or elk or what was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, both actually.
Yeah. Okay.
The probably the most interesting thing actually is tracking elk during bow season. Last year I was hunting with my brother and my dad. I was filming. My brother had the tag, so my dad was like doing kind of drop back calling, and I was filming up with Logan. This one day we were moving, just trying to, basically just find a bull, and we end up bumping a couple of cows. And as those cows run, they run out and they look back, give us the old look back, and then they run up a pretty steep ridge.
Yeah.
A few seconds later, here comes a nice bull coming up behind them, and we watch them go up, and you could tell it just sounded like they went up there and they kind of stopped and weren't going too far. So we finally, like after much discussion of what we should do, we decided like, well, let's just go look at their tracks, like we see the tracks pretty clear in this exact ground type that we were in. And it's not, the whole entire area, but like if you're in this kind of just this roadblock essentially, it's pretty open understory.
Yeah.
And then there's so much pine,
yeah,
pine litter that when they step on it, they're so heavy that they'll just like pretty clearly indent it. And obviously there's lots of tracks because they'll stay there for a long time too, but you can tell a fresh one over an old one. And so we went up there to where we saw him.
Call that dry ground tracking, Zach.
Dry ground tracking.
Dry ground. There you go.
So we got on that dry ground track, and it was like, well, this is actually really easy to follow. And so we followed them, could tell like what we heard was true. They just got up on the top and they just started going slow. And so, we weren't really being super aggressive because we know how fresh that is. And so just kept on it, and eventually we ran into the cows, and he bugled just behind them, but one of the cows got up ahead, and once they got back in sight, they were coming in towards us close, and they started splitting up, and one of them caught our wind.
Yeah.
And it was one of those deals where it's like, oh, if he follows this cow, like we're gonna get a slam dunk shot at him. But we never did see him come back. But he was there. I mean, heard a bugle, knew he was right there, and it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't like we went, miles and miles, but it was, I mean, a good, yeah, it might have been. It might have been about a mile. I mean, anywhere from a
Yeah.
half mile to a mile, I would
Yeah.
say, is what we ended up tracking them. And that was, yeah, completely on the dry ground. And that was super cool. And then tracked mule deer in the snow. Um, Felt like Ben and I took one track one day, like for a long time until he kind of just started getting into these patches that were no longer covered in snow and
Yeah.
then a lot of other deer. And it was somewhat of a rushed deal at that point. It was the last day of season, and
Yeah.
it was getting late. But we were on that track. I was really pleased with how confident we were for so long. I mean, hours.
Yeah.
Um, the whole afternoon essentially until say the last hour of daylight, and then just a couple other like times with both deer and elk, just
Yeah.
random times, like sometimes dry. Like one time we tracked one till it was like last year we tracked an elk on dry until it was like, man, he's going out into this hellhole and like there's a chance he's just gonna run onto private, and
Yeah.
so we just
Yeah.
kind of decided to bail off of it. But that was another example of tracking one for a long way and being really
Yeah.
confident that we were just on his track. And so I guess to me that's pretty cool, pretty fun. My
Yeah.
dad and my brother tracked turkeys this spring in
Did
the
you
snow.
really
Yeah,
in the
and like
snow?
saw them because of it. Didn't kill them, but saw them. Ended up getting on them. Yeah, tracked them in the snow.
That's
Just
awesome.
it's a different climate out here.
Yeah. Oh, that's,
Yeah. I think it was this past year. Might have been the year before. I can't remember. But we got an October snow, which for us is fairly rare during moose season. I don't remember if it was during archery or
yeah.
during rifle, but there was that's a pretty rare occurrence. I remember there was several bulls that
Oh, I
got
think
killed that day.
if you can find a bull moose track up here and you have a tag and there's snow on the ground,
they're not moving.
it's a big problem for him.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not like they're getting in a barnyard of
No.
doe tracks or anything.
No, and they're
like
easy
a
to
buck
tell.
does.
Like it's not even close.
Yeah.
So was there from just following animals, dry ground or in the snow? Has there been anything that stood out to you that like you learned? You're like, whoa, this is not what I thought. Does that make sense? I know you spend a lot of time with them anyways in that same setting.
hmm
So
hmm
obviously you're relying
I
more on
just
the
think
visual.
I just think the hardest thing to like wrap your head around is, and I think this goes for any tracking situation I've been in, when something's going, it's just hard to visualize them actually doing that. Because like you're saying, like we could sit there for days and days and days and days and days and watch that spot, and he never comes through there. So the fact that you're seeing proof that he did in fact go
Hmm.
through there, I know it seems ridiculous, but it's just that's hard to wrap my head around. I think that's the biggest um, surprising factor.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing, like I guess the one example that I have from this year, when we were muzzleloader hunting was, and this is I actually haven't thought about this very much recently. It's funny how how your brain can kind of go in waves of certain seasons and
Hmm.
everything, right? Because like been thinking about turkey a lot, and then you know just early season fall hunting, and haven't really been thinking about the snow stuff. But there was this hunt where we were doing the we were doing a drive. It was muzzleloader season, and we had bumped this buck, and we watched him go through. Bumped him right out of the spot that he was supposed to come out of, and he ran right through the spot he was supposed to come or go through. But Shane wasn't there, where Shane wasn't where he was supposed to be, which wouldn't be the same. Well, maybe it could be the same story, but likely wouldn't be the same exact story if that wasn't the case. So
Right.
it all works out. But basically, we regroup after this drive, all of us, and we discuss it. And it's like, well, somebody should definitely follow this track. And the thing that was so cool is this area in particular, I've just spent way too much time in, to the point of like I call it off every year. Like I'm not going back. I'm tired of it. I know, like I've been in there too much, and I am really like in a lot of ways I am. But this was kind of like, I don't know, just a really cool. I mean, this is why you do go back sometimes, I suppose. So this thing has went through a spot, come out of a spot where we've seen bucks go before, and he's ran through a spot that we've seen bucks go. And I mean, he's in a drive that we've been really successful with, but now he's headed like cross country.
Mm-hmm.
And this area that we're hunting is like pretty huge. There's a lot of just a lot of area there. And there's some of it like specific areas that we hunt, and there's other specific areas that you just kind of breeze past because
Yep.
there's just too much of it to ever, I shouldn't say breeze past. You move through, but you maybe don't necessarily set up in there to deer hunt or specifically target it for a drive, but you know how it kind of works and you know the potential that it has. But part of that is like scale and drives and bow. I mean, it's just there's so many details as to why that is the way it is. But I've been in there a lot, and I kind of had started to see like all these different places where like they're buck pit stops. And essentially there's this one ridge that he's headed towards that I've never hunted specifically, but I've seen the buck sign there. But everything past that, it's like I have like spent a
Mm-hmm.
decent amount of time in the next 2 or 3 bedding areas past that. And it's like, well, he's either gonna be like here, 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 or here.
Yeah.
And it's like if he's made it that far, then he's going where we are going anyway. So
Okay.
so these guys we just make this plan up like super fast, which I think is super cool. And I mean this is as much drive strategy as it is tracking
Yeah.
strategy, but they go hand in hand in this situation. So it's like, all right, we got enough time to like make this one big move, and that one group goes, Ben takes like this huge group of standers and they go on one side of it. And then I'm part of like the 3 groups of drivers, but we're all gonna just kind of cross country, make this guess on where this buck's going towards the next drive. And then we're going to be drivers for those guys that are making this ridiculous loop. So it's like we've got these pieces that are moving
Yeah.
way away from each other, all to come back towards each other and have to be on the right time. Like they can't get there early and we can't get there early,
Yeah.
or vice versa. We can't get there late and they get there early, whatever. We're going to screw it all up. And so basically, we make this route on the map of like where we think the buck's going to go. And then the other 2 groups, it was Shane and Brett, and then Jake Lynch and Mac, they were like paralleling us
Mm-hmm.
where we think the buck's gonna go. But then what was so cool, and this is why, more like directed to your question specifically, is he just proceeded to go exactly where we thought the whole
Yeah.
way. Like right past all that buck sign, to the point where it's like we're making this like mile move or whatever. And he's checking every box. He's doing exactly what we've said he's going to do. And that's just because we've spent this time in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think he's going to go down this ridge. If he doesn't bed there, there's a chance he beds in this thick bottom. If he doesn't bed there, that next ridge, he might be on that. And then if he is there, even if we screw it up, he's headed towards
Yeah.
our other group. And so, I mean, we proceed to follow his tracks into that first bedding ridge. And what was cool is to watch him and have that living, there's like actual proof he did that in daylight.
Yep.
Him go past all those rubs I've seen. Him use that trail that I've seen that's on that weird side hill that's real steep. Like you'd think, why are deer ever even doing this? It's like you're seeing the proof that he did this today. And granted, he was bumped, But there's a certain point too where you can see he's relaxing
Mm-hmm.
and he's
Yeah.
considering bedding in that first spot and he doesn't, and he gets down that thick bottom and he does even more, just starting kind of slowly taking oddball trails, not oddball, like going in the same area, but maybe slowing it down a little bit. And then sure enough, he bedded on the, I guess the second area or second, third, whatever, one of the areas that we thought he was going to be in, could be in, and here he runs straight into up and over into the next bedding area. Well, when he does that, that's the target that we're ultimately driving. And so by tracking that buck, we bumped him all the way through all the places we thought he would be, straight into the next drive where those guys are collapsing on the backside. And we pretty much just tracked him straight into the middle of the drive. And had he, had he done that in the dry, I guess here's how you use that though. You just got to believe in the spot, right? Like that's all it really is doing. Believe in it. It's like
Yep.
if you've seen that buck sign there, it's like he ran right through all those buck rubs. He didn't make any,
Mm-hmm.
He just put one set of stamp in that snow that day. But all that's telling me is like, okay, him and all the other bucks that are in this area, they are using this trail. I mean, again, here's the proof. And why do you need it? You may be thinking, well, why do you need it? The rubs are there. Sometimes you need it.
Oh, I think
Sometimes you
need
need
it.
that little extra
think
boost of confidence to say, like,
100%.
he
Honestly,
is here.
the number one thing, other than I think your point is the biggest thing, but it kind of goes right with that, is I was shocked even outside the peak of the rut, particularly later in the rut and early into December, just how much ground bucks were covering in daylight. Like that blew my mind. Like
Yeah.
December 7th, right? It's like, oh, rut's over. They're like bed to food. It's like, not this dude. Like he was still doing it. He walked 4 miles in daylight. I'm like,
Yep.
holy crap. Like that was a big eye opener for me. And it just gave me confidence that just because you don't see them when you're there doesn't mean they aren't moving. So that was number one.
Right.
But then your point is number two. To predict and to think all these things is one thing, but to actually have the proof on the ground that they went and did all those things, it gives you so much more confidence in your judgment of, sign and areas and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, they did that. No, he did that. Like the thing. He did the thing. Yeah, no, we're on the right track. Like, good. We can draw parallels now, and we can make assumptions now, too, because we know for sure he did that. When you get like one picture of a deer or you have one sighting of a deer, that's a snapshot, right? But when you're following them in the snow, you know what they've done for hours and hours out continuously. You don't lose that train. It's a continuous knowledge of what they did. And I think a lot of times they're doing what you thought they were, but like you
That's
said,
right.
It is just like a whole another level of confidence. It's not like, I got them figured out, but it's like I figured that out, like enough, and I was that's huge.
Yeah, and like you said, it's building that confidence for when you have to like be patient on that area, like because I think it's easy to start convincing yourself like, oh, that's night sign, or oh, that's he didn't really do that when I can hunt him, or like he's not doing that when I want him to.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is he probably is some days, but it's just kind of a waiting game. Or there's another piece that you still have to figure out, right? Like, for example, I think that you can find, this is the risk in off-season scouting, I think, like too early, is you might find these specific areas that are like for example, when I'm thinking of that buck, when I think of that specific one and what he did that day, it's like he's telling me, okay, specifically a trail between bed to bed, and then kind of an area in the creek bottom that he feels comfortable in. Like it was obvious that he slowed down in that thick creek bottom, and that kind of told me something else. And then just seeing where he bedded and everything, and how he essentially set himself up to bust us doing exactly what we were doing, which is what he did. He totally laid there like, okay, I'll bust you come across that creek bottom. He did it.
Yeah.
Like had we been hunting solo, we would have probably not approached it that way. Just kind of assuming his move there
Yeah.
too. But anyway, it's like it's telling us these like pieces of the puzzle. But I guess if you find that those pieces of the puzzle, you can find them just the same. Like let's say we were tracking him in the off season and he wasn't bucked. So he's making these moves on his own time. The risk with doing that on the off season is when you have a major change in a food source, for example, I think it can completely flip all those things. Like I'm not saying that that bed can't be used, for example, but if the one that's 2 or 3 ridges over, or even sometimes 2 miles over, or 7 or 15
Mm-hmm.
miles, like has the thing that the deer wants next year.
Yeah.
I mean, what we see a lot too, and I think it's always important to bring up like what we are presented in hunting media a lot is, you know, Midwest farm
Yeah.
country hunting. And it's like, you're seeing this buck, he's coming out of the field, field edge, alfalfa field every day in October there in, southern Iowa. And it's like, okay, you know, how's he doing that in my area? And it's like, well, I mean, he probably isn't doing that. Like he just, a lot of places he flat out isn't. But how do you try to think of that like instead of the alfalfa field in the wide open, it's like what specific acorn
Yeah.
crop is it, or what specific, timber harvest was it, or, okay,
Yeah.
another example, even in big woods, river bottom goes up or creek bottom floods, and all of a sudden you got new plants that weren't growing there last year
Yeah.
down in the bottom. I mean, for, the early part of the season, maybe the first 2 weeks of season, maybe he's just
Yeah.
down there every night in broad daylight, munching away.
And
And if you're not, if you're not moving, I guess let's put it this way. If you're only basing things off of history from the off season, when the magazine articles tell you when you have to
yeah.
scout, just know that there is risk in only scouting at that time. That's why I'm so adamant about like you don't have to always hunt off the ground, but you should be in season scouting like
Yeah. I
some. I
totally
think
agree.
everybody should be,
That's
you know.
that's one thing I'm guilty of is I've just, and a lot of it's just because of lack of time, and it's just
Yeah.
like I have to kind of make assumptions that like, hey,
Hmm.
this is going to be the same as last year, and we're going to go with that, and I'm going to ride that thing. But like, but I've been realizing I'm like, man, I almost rather take a day or two before I commit to it to like make sure that like that is the right move, because like I can think of an example a couple of years ago where I just was like, I'm just going on. It was like purely on, and I even knew in the back of my head, I'm like, this year isn't the same. I'm like, yeah, but maybe it'll be the same enough that it will still work. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
wasn't.
yeah.
So it's like, all right,
Oh,
you got to
I've
do
done it.
that.
I do it too. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm, but I do it too.
Oh,
Anyway,
for
keep
sure.
going.
I think back to your point with the Southern Iowa alfalfa field situation. I think that you can learn something from that and relate it to the area you're hunting. You just, like you said, you got to say, okay, like what's the food source? How is he behaving? Why is he doing? You can't be looking for the alfalfa field in,
Right.
Vermont. like
Yeah.
don't look for the alfalfa field. Look for what represents the alfalfa field. Because honestly, like when I started hunting up here, I
That's a
like
good term.
consumed a bunch of that type of stuff. But I didn't say,
Mhm.
oh, well, where's the bean field? I gotta look. I'm just gonna keep looking for the bean field that doesn't exist. I didn't do that. I was like, okay, well, how does this relate? And I was able to
Mhm.
relate it and find some success doing that.
Absolutely.
But like, you have to think about it and try to say, okay, so what is serving as the food source, and why are they using that, and when are they changing
Well,
patterns and all that stuff. So
and I'm also saying with that example in Iowa, like I guess that is no different, truthfully, than the buck that's bedding up on the ridge and walking, even if it's, I mean, whether it's 100 yards down or 500
yeah,
yards down and standing in that creek bottom and feeding on whatever it is, or that's no different than that buck in Iowa making that move from thicket to
Right.
alfalfa field, it's no different except for the fact that it's way easier to see him.
Yep.
So when it's way easier to see him, then you have this like confirmation much faster that it's
Yep.
happening. Where on the flip side, if you get down into that creek bottom and you're scouting early October, for example, let's say, bow season just opened at the beginning of October and you're walking down there, it's still early in the season, and you find, fresh big buck chacks. You see browse everywhere. You see some smoking fresh rubs, and you know that they have a
Yeah.
tendency to bed up there. It's like, well, maybe it's worth a shot just hanging out here one evening, or,
Yeah.
sitting on the ridge above it in the morning, or however time whatever time, you've got to put into that. And that's how I kind of do the majority of all the deer hunting or any hunting, I guess, at this point. It's just like kind of cruise areas that I think look like they should be decent and just hope for the best until you stumble into it, essentially. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously, there's certain times where like you treat certain things differently. I can't just blanket statement and say I'm just cruising around just like willy-nilly, but it's kind of like, well, we got to kind of just explore an area until we start to see some sort of confirmation. And I mean, there's levels to that confirmation too. Like some areas it is a visual. Some areas it's super easy to get the visual and you're like, boom, got it. Some areas it might be a snow track in the snow. Some areas it might be, some times of the year it's going to be different. I just think that, um, kind of being on the move constantly, like, I guess I feel that sitting, like, again, I talk so much about hunting off the ground. It's like there's still a difference between sitting and stalking, like
Mm-hmm.
setting up or still hunting. It's like they're stalking, they're still hunting, and there's set up. It's like I'm still setting up a lot, but I just don't set up until it's like, okay, I know that
Yeah.
I've like have kind of went through a bunch of different options, and this area has the most sign. Not even the specific spot, but the area,
Yeah.
like this section, this, and scale is going to vary.
Yeah.
But I just think, like, to me, that's how, in the simplest form, that's how you
Let
break
me
down the strategy that I apply the most.
let me ask you this. Obviously you spent a lot of time on, the aerials, right?
Hmm.
Looking at maps. And that's kind of precedes what you're talking about. What are some examples of spots you found on the maps and you went there and they were like no good? And where was the error made? Like, what do you think the big, like, what were you like, oh, I was off because of? What are some of those factors that people may look at a map, pick out spots that they think looks really good, and they go there, and like after a period of time, like, this is not at all what I thought it was.
Yeah,
Do you have
that's a great
examples,
question.
like specific
Yeah,
ones, and why? Yeah, I'm
I'm
sure you
sure
do, but like, what are some of the
tons.
main ones that were like that maybe someone could learn from, if that makes sense?
Um, Water has been one that I've looked back on, and that goes for like many a critters, right? Where it's like I kind of always say start with water. Like everything needs water,
Yeah.
right? When people hear us probably talk a lot about that with turkey, and that's certainly true, but like it kind of goes for deer, elk, pronghorn, whatever. Like anything that I've hunted, I mean bear would be the same way. Like if you don't have water, or you're not thinking about how they may relate to that, I think that's square one. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that I'm thinking right on water. That might put me in a 5 mile area. That might put me in a 400-yard area. I don't. It depends. That's pretty generalized. But water is one that I've looked back on spots and been like, man, there's no water around. The other thing specific to aerials that like I think everybody at some point or another has probably made the mistake of is assuming too much about like the understory.
Mm,
So like for example, I might be looking at an area and be like, man, this is going to be money. Terrain wise, this is lights out. And whether it be a funnel or like a, suspected bedding area, if you get there and the cover's just like wide open, it may not be as good as what you once
Mm-hmm.
thought. And I've had that happen a lot. Like there's one spot specifically where we had been hunting and it was thick and pretty diverse in that area. And we're like, oh, tomorrow let's come in from this other side and we'll hunt that whole big block. Like we pretty much just burnt a whole day hunting that big block because it was just open timber. And yeah, there's some sign there, but like not the type of sign that we were looking for. And so, just kind of misreading um, actual stem count, I suppose, would be the best way to put it. Is another major one that I've made the mistake on. And not just thinking like about it a little bit more in depth. And then
I can give two
I was
examples too that you kind of spurred my. One thing was like, of course, you can look at a topo and like see that stuff's steep, but sometimes you go there and it's like extremely steep. And I remember there was one saddle in particular that I thought was going to be like the best saddle ever. Like I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And it was way in, and I hiked. It was like pretty far, pretty remote. And I got up in there and like, I'm still super positive, and actually everything around it looked good. Like the habitat, like to lead up, so it had everything to support animals in the area, right? And then I start making up towards the saddle, and I'm like, man, this is kind of steep. Next thing you know, I'm literally like reaching and grabbing shit, and I'm climbing for like and I get up there and I'm like, man, I don't, the whole point of a saddle is it's like the path of least resistance, an efficient way to traverse it. I'm like, that wasn't efficient. Like, I don't think a rutting buck's coming up over this. Like, he's going to wrap that and go the other way. And I got up in there and I just was like, and I did put a camera in there because why not? I already went up, and it was just, they were not doing what I thought because I underestimated, how dramatic that topography was. It was like, are freaking like this, like going up to it. It was like a knife edge. And they just, I'm sure don't get me wrong, they went over it. Like deer go up there. I'm not saying it, but it wasn't like this big highway where I was going to catch bucks traveling. No, it wasn't that.
I've made that mistake too because it's all relative, like topo lines to the stuff around it. So if you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, like you said, that's where the saddle is, and then it's like, no, the thing that's next to it was already steep, and then this is just a cliff. Like,
it was like so steep. It was, it was like it was. So that was one that, and you can kind of, I don't know. I don't think you can. I don't think you can really grasp how steep stuff is, unless it's just like a solid wall of topo lines until you actually go there. I think that's one thing. The other one I made was I was scouting this area. It was pretty big woods, really big woods actually, and it was a bunch of swamp systems. And what I was doing was I was actually seeing deer trails on aerials going through the swamps. Okay, so I was looking at that, and I was like all jazzed on a couple of these spots. And I went in there, and really the scale of the swamp was a lot bigger than I thought. Mm-hmm. And I realized that there wasn't much. The swamp was very open. This one in particular that I just was like, man, that was a miss. Like, that was just a miss. It was very open, and there were some islands out in the swamp, but they were so small that, like, they just didn't really have – first off, there wasn't, like, a lot of cover around them in the swamp. It was, like, pretty short stuff that you could – it's not like you're hiding in it. And then the islands didn't really have much. And then the other thing I realized, I'm walking across this swamp, and – I'm looking back where I walked, and I just like see this trail that from my feet, just like right through the swamp, and it was like a mossy type stuff. And I'm like, oh, if 5 deer walked through here in a year, I would see this trail like on the aerial. That's how. And I was like, I don't think there's many deer walking this trail like at all. Like I think that maybe a couple. I mean, maybe a buck chased a doe across at one time, and now I'm seeing it on the aerial, and it's like I mistook that for that's a deer highway. It wasn't a deer highway, and it was a miss. And so like there's just certain things like that like I would never know that unless I went there. I never know. Like you can't tell how tall that swamp is. It like it was like that. Like it's like a wide open field. You know what I mean? So those are things you just can't tell.
Yeah, another one that I've made, I'd say this is like the most common mistake, and this isn't necessarily something that I thought was going to be good. It's rather something I thought wasn't going to be good, and I think is good later is, and it kind of plays into the steep thing, is driving a road and thinking that like, oh, that other road is a factor. Like, for example, if I'm looking at a road on the bottom and it's super steep going up, the
Yep.
next road is like that way, I might think that this, in my head, I may perceive this like block as being really, really small. And it might be small acreage wise, but as far as like cover, if it's super steep and it's really thick in there, well, I mean, there might be deer hanging out right up
Right.
there. That's one mistake I think I make often, or just assume that everything that is marked as a road for sure is
Right.
navigable,
Yep.
which is absolutely not true.
Right.
That's been a huge, I mean, especially out west, something I do all the time. But I mean, same goes for, I mean, the examples that I had in my mind originally were all Eastern examples
Yeah.
and Southern examples.
That's one of the biggest
Um,
things. I know you guys do this a ton too, but when I go to a new area, like first thing I'm doing is I'm like, all right, I have all these
Drive.
assumptions based on just access, and I'm like, I'm gonna circle the whole area and like, okay, I can get in there. Someone get in there. Can't go up there. Like, oh shit, there's this. I didn't know this was there. Just getting access and seeing what is available, the scale of things. That's the other thing, you get a feel for the scale of stuff. And like you said, you
Yes.
may think a piece is small, and then you drive around, you're like, that ain't small at all. like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
plenty big.
especially when like I think it changes real fast too when vegetation densities change,
Yep.
right? Like if it's really open, yeah, it might be still
Well,
pretty small, but
Well,
if
even
it's
like
super
out west
thick,
where it's open, you can see a lot. Like
yeah, that
like
too.
you could go around 500 acres and be like, that thing's tiny. That's a tiny little piece, but it's 500 acres. Where if you do that somewhere else, it seems plenty big. So
Yeah.
yeah, just getting a feel for that stuff, scouting access even before you go in, because I mean you can eliminate probably half of your spots you want to check out just by be like, oh, that's not like
Oh yeah.
that access is not what I thought at all, and like. Or you might go there and see there's a bunch of human activity in one spot and be like, yeah, I don't want to mess with that. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think that's trying to nail that's pretty beneficial though. Like some of that map stuff and like having a process. And if you don't have a ton of time to actually do boots, I mean, in an ideal world, you can pin stuff on the map and go walk it for 3 days and then
Yeah.
like really like snuff everything out. But like in reality, most people don't it's just not realistic to do that. So
No.
if you can be efficient with your maps, learn as much as you can, and then like I like to have like dude, I like plan the whole thing. I'm like, all right, this is my plan. I'm gonna drive around here. I'm gonna check these 3 spots. After that, I'm gonna call some of them, and then it's like, all right, then I'm gonna go. I have like a whole process in, and it's like, so I'm not just sitting there being like, oh shit, what now? You know what I mean? And then
Oh
you don't
yeah.
have a plan.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that the one thing you're talking about of like having the plan, I think one of the most important parts of map scouting nowadays is just trying to make sure that I'm not making those mistakes. Like to your point, it's like, how do I eliminate, time spent thinking that something is a certain way and then getting there and being like, oh, like I got to rethink all this. Like basically taking those past experiences and at least putting it, not necessarily saying like, how do I put it? Okay, if I'm going to a new spot and I think I got the scale down generally, at least not going into it like expecting that I know what the scale is, right? Like you at least have an expectation that I might get here, and if this is bigger than I think, okay, then I might think about it differently this way. Like to me,
Yes.
that's a big part of the plan as well,
Yeah.
is just like being willing to basically try not to take yourself too seriously in your map scouting, right? Because to your point, you get in some of those areas where you see trails on a map and it's like, maybe last year they were here, or maybe the vegetation that one year when the photo was taken was just exactly right to create the trails, but now it's overgrown. Like, and you get that in clear cuts a lot. You might see a clear cut on a map and be like, oh man, this is going to be perfect. Like this looks like it's nice and young, and there's going to be a high stem count. You get there and it's like, well, there's only like maples growing in here. The understory's completely open. Nothing's bedding in here or even feeding in here anymore. It's like, or at least the time of the year, whatever that you're there. I just think that those mistakes are like I guess it's like they humble you, right? Like
Well,
sometimes they physically humble you, sometimes they like humble you in the fact that like,
the
oh,
other,
I thought I had this figured out, like your
well,
track
yeah.
example. It's
Just
like, no, you actually didn't know anything
just
about it
have the
here.
self-awareness to know that this may not be anything like I think. And what I've actually started to do is I'll like hedge my bets. So I'll find what I think is going to be the best stuff. And then I'll literally go in and be like, all right, what is nothing like what I think is going to be good? And then I'll be like, well, okay, why would that maybe not be good? And I think of like 10 different reasons. I'm like, all right, so if that's the case, then what am I looking for? And then I'll look for another place that's like in the same region. I'll be like, okay, so this is like, totally different terrain, like looks like different habit, like, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll pick that too. And then I'll be like, because you may go to that first one and be like, no way.
Oh
I'm going to
yeah.
180 out to this other spot. And then maybe like, that's it. So picking a couple different, like, and then even on
Extremes.
scale too, like you may go into something and be like, dude, this is huge. There's no, like, I don't even like, I don't, it's too big. Like, it's almost like the
Yeah.
scale's too big. Like you think a saddle's
Oh, it
going to be good
happens.
and
Yeah.
the saddle's like not even close. That's the other thing is just, if you can try to do, like I'll do all the time I'm using my tools to find out acreage of spots, and I'm like, oh shit, that looked like it was about 70 acres, but it's 500. Like, oh shit. Or like I thought that was going to be 100 yards, 500 yards. All right. And then just looking at how much elevation change. So you can get pretty close, but still, like, I'll tell you, for example, like out west, right? You gain 1,000 feet of elevation in open country on like hard ground with nothing but like grass, and then you try to do the same thing like in like an old burn or like with a bunch of blowdowns or in the east where it's just like, dude, that 500 yards feels like 5,000 yards, and it's just a different thing. So just learning that is a big deal. Like some of these dense forests that have like these little micro rolls, like literally like you're stepping up and down, and it's like, oh my God, there's so much more surface area that these
Yes.
places feel enormous and impossible to like, yeah. So some of that stuff you just don't know until you're there, but you can start to
Well, and I mean,
have ideas.
you also wouldn't even, I mean, honestly, what's so cool about this conversation is you wouldn't even know that exists unless you're someone that explores or you're talking to somebody that
Yeah.
explores. And then you have to be open-minded enough to like accept that their perspective is like legit, right? Because like I could be sitting here listening to you and be like, dude, Brett's totally full of it. Like I've never been anywhere where like every step is like,
Yeah.
its own little micro hill, and it's like, but I have been there
Yeah.
and I do know what you're talking about. And it is totally just like throw you through a complete loop. Like you talked about the burn or blow down or whatever. I mean, dude, like we were packing this elk out one time, and little did we know there was I mean, I think deep down we knew that there was this real easy route out, but we just didn't know where it was. We didn't know the land well enough. And so we're taking this straight up. It's like, it's not even that far. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I can't imagine it was even, I mean, I can't imagine it was much more than a half mile if it was. But it was just straight through these, like, it was straight up, and there was like chest high down deadfall. And it's like, that was the most brutal and scary place I've probably ever walked, because it was just also like constantly close to an edge.
Yeah.
Because if you got further away from the edge, it got thicker even yet. And I mean, you talk about like taking a measure, like which I'm also, obsessive about. Like, oh, I'm going to measure this, I'm going to measure
Yeah.
this, and like constantly making, Onyx has it so you can just do the two fingers. And I'm constantly just doing quick measurements. And I know no matter how much I do this, throughout the rest of life, like I'm probably never going to perfect, in my mind what
Right.
300 yards looks like from spot to spot, right? You can never
Yeah.
perfect that expectation.
Yeah, it's like, is that a short,
because-
an easy 80 or a nightmare 80 yards? Like, which one is it? Like, we'll find
Yeah,
out.
is that a 200 that's going to actually feel like a 5K, or
Yeah. Exactly.
or is that a 300 that feels like I'm walking across 3 football fields?
Well, and some of the times too, we were talking about like stuff that maybe not be deep or big enough. It's the same thing with that. It's like, dude, I went 100 yards off the road and I felt like I was 100 miles off the road. Like,
Yes.
I think we're good here. Like, there's no one's going in there, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
And I've been in so many areas. It's like, you get like, people are like, oh, I got to go miles back. I'm like, not in there. You don't. Like, you go 100,
Right.
200 yards and you're mile. You feel like you're miles. So
Well, and I just think the one thing that's funny in hunting, and like I guess, we were talking about podcasts earlier, and like I haven't done one in a while. Like part of like my hesitation to do them sometimes is I see clips of other people and they're talking like there's such a sure thing and you gotta do it a
Yeah,
certain
I
way. And
know.
it's like, dude, I don't even like I don't know what every situation could ever even look like. Like I've done a lot of different stuff and I'm really happy that I have because it's certainly helped. Like I can't grasp everybody's situation. Like
No.
every situation's so unique and I think that sometimes you get on a rant about something or you feel passionate about something and it's like then you actually get a different perspective on it and it's like, oh well, now I think a little bit differently about those things. And I just don't ever want people to think that like I think I know everything there is to know. Like I seriously, I mean, I have more terrible hunts than people even like have an idea. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much content that we produce, but there's also so much that we don't produce because it's
Yeah.
like we don't even know what to talk about yet. Like maybe we repurpose it. Like I think that's one of the cool things about these like trial and error type hunts that are result in major error is I think that at some point you could probably frame it to be like, hey, here's a bunch of examples of how we messed this up, but in the moment it's like I don't even know how to talk about this yet. But we're just screwing it up. That's
Yeah.
all we're doing. And 90% of my hunting is that. It's just
Well,
it's the error part of the trial and
and
error. The
sometimes
the pipes that everybody sees are the good ones, right?
you don't know what you're doing wrong until you figure out what you're doing right. Right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's why that wasn't working because this is what and then you find it and you're like, okay, yeah, because you're like, this ain't working, something isn't going, I'm not really sure. And you're like, I got to try something different, and then maybe that doesn't work, and then finally you get to something and you're like, okay, this
Yeah.
is what I need to focus on. This is what's going on here. That other first area or first thing I was doing wasn't working because I didn't have this component. But now I know that's the
Mm-hmm.
component. Now you can talk about that. Before you're like, I
Yep.
don't know why this isn't working, but
Yeah.
hopefully I can find out someday.
Well, well, and I think you talk about what's working and what's not. I mean, it can like we talk about strategy and like style and whatever. I mean, you go back to even like cut all the sign and like location out of it. It's like your mistake might be that you're not getting enough cover and you move too much.
Right.
Like you may not even know that you're the hunter that moves too much until someone, I mean, you could be getting busted and not even know it in some examples. Like I'm sure that there's been times that that's happened to all hunters, but like that could be an individual's mistake every time. Another guy's mistake might be that he's burying himself in the cover and he can't move enough. But until you
Yeah.
have that experience where you just completely screw up, whatever it may be, you may not even know that like you're even doing those things. And I just think it's,
I think
I don't know,
sometimes
pretty fascinating.
you make mistakes and then you keep you're making it and you keep making it, and sometimes you're like, yeah, I know I'm doing that, but I'm just gonna keep doing it because of what. Like for one thing I do, and I wish that since I don't have a lot of time, I discount and cast away so much of the woods and ignore it. And I wish that I had time to break it down, but I know that if I do, it's just I'm not gonna get anything done, and I'm like, I just
You
have to
don't
assume
always
that's
want
all
that.
junk, and I have to let it go. And I honestly, I'm like blinders, and I just stomp through that stuff. I don't even want to look at it because like I'm gonna see something and it's gonna throw me off, and I'm like, nope, not paying attention to it. And I'm like, I know that's probably not good, but it's like that's just part of my
No,
process.
no,
You know what I mean?
on the flip side, I have caught myself spending too much time on it.
Yeah.
Like I think I think one of the things that I was kind of sorting out when we were in the Adirondacks together was I was kind of sorting out the fact that I had been tiptoeing too much in that window of
Yeah.
time. Like I had been kind of overthinking certain things and playing it a little too timid and breaking down too much of all the tiny little details instead of just like opening up the scale of it and like protecting like spots, I guess. Like that's something that I think is a terrible habit of my own. And I think like, I don't know, just knowing how like, I guess at least the way that I feel people, again, like say that I'm doing certain things, right? It's like, and maybe this is just based, I mean, so much of this can just be based off of like, we don't know the full situation, but it's like, oh, like that guy that's ground hunting, he's just going and ruining the spot for everybody else, blah blah blah. Like that's what I hear all the time. I mean, y'all are getting the message across that that's what you believe. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Because I know the bigger picture, but I think just knowing how people perceive me and knowing how often, which is aggressive and overly aggressive, but then knowing how much I actually am too timid,
yeah,
just makes me wonder about the people that think I'm too aggressive, right? Because it's like number one mistake in hunting, period, for me. And this is related to my style and my situations, but it doesn't matter which one it is, like specific. It could be bow hunting early season, it could be bow hunting late season, gun hunting early, bow hunting late, or gun hunting late, whatever. It doesn't matter. It could be one species, could be another. If I'm playing it safe, I'm not getting the thing I'm after.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Like if I start getting concerned, like, I mean, dude, there's been so many times we've went into places and just felt like you just totally blew them out of there. And then you go right back in there and then you have the next 3 days of absurd action, right? Like, I mean, the intention could have been to drive them out of there at one point. And then, I mean, that buck that I talked about making the bed shift, talking about how he came in there and made that bed shift. Well, just a few days before that, we straight up drove that to see if there were deer in there, doing a bow drive to see if there were deer in there.
Yeah.
And then shot a buck in there.
And that wasn't a big area, was it?
No, it was tiny. It was like 10 acres, maybe.
No, I think that if every day someone did that, probably affect them a little differently, right?
Absolutely.
But in knowing that like I say the same thing, like I don't think bumping deer once means anything to like any deer. Like one time. It's just like there is probably a point where it does have a negative effect, but also I think that it depends on where you're hunting because like some of the areas here, like I know people walk around the areas that I hunt and I'm like, well, whatever. I'm just like, I hope they didn't kill one of those. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Right. I mean, hopefully they did for them, but I'm like, I hope he's still there, right? Like, I hope he swerved him, but but then I'll be like, and if he did, then he's still there. He's not leaving. Like, but if every day there's people going through the same, it's like, well, then that does probably have a negative impact. But like going into an area one time or twice and bumping it, that's just.
Well, and I think like a lot of times I think that I'm being intrusive, and this is where I get hung up. I think I'm being intrusive, and I'm really not, which is what's been happening in that river bottom.
Yep.
I think I'm being way too aggressive, and I'm not. I'm not even being close to aggressive enough for what I want to accomplish out there. And also, another example would just be like, I'm getting hung up on that, like how we kind of got on this is, I think to myself, like, I'm not going to do the tunnel vision and get to the spot. I'm going to like have an open perspective because anything can happen. And I've had like seasons or streaks where I look back and I'm like, yeah, I mean, you can act like that, but maybe not spend that much time on it, if that makes sense. Like, so how I've tried to shape it, moving forward is like anything can happen. And as stuff starts to happen, real quick, reframe your mindset. But if it doesn't, don't waste time on it. Like, just keep it moving. So, like, example being, here's just a really good example. We were hunting mule deer, and and I mean, this is, it doesn't matter if it's mule deer or not. Halfway, wish I wouldn't have said it, because people would be like, oh, y'all.
It was hybrid, mule deer, whitetail hybrids.
Right. We were hunting deer, and we basically popped up on this ridge, and we had this expectation that we were going to get up on the southern facing slope where we had seen the deer before, the day before, and we had seen this buck, who we're about to see in this story. And we had seen him like way over that way. So like we kind of just hoofing it in there. And we get up to, and we're crunching snow, just making a ton of noise. Then all of a sudden, it's just like I'm walking along. I looked over, and there's a doe bedded, like, doing the old like, hope they don't see us, hope they just walk down the trail. And we're on a trail that people definitely hike down, like you're saying, not just like people walk through there. And so it's kind of one of these deals where it's like, yeah, maybe she thinks we're gonna walk past, and eventually she gets up and starts moving, and Ben's up ahead of me, and since she, whatever, he kind of just keeps on moving. But in my mind, it's kind of like, I don't really know why yet, but there's deer here. They weren't here yesterday, and we walked right through here. And so like I kept watching them, I don't know. It's like, I'm gonna keep watching. You never know who she's gonna pick up along the way. And sure enough, as like I saw him going up the mountain, there he's following her, and he didn't spook, but she did.
Yeah.
And by moving, we were kind of staying with them as they were moving up, and they were hitting these openings. And all of a sudden, for a split second, I see old big boy there following her. And had a guy just been like completely ready and willing to adjust on the spot, you shot the buck. And it was like a buck. He was a shooter. Like he was for sure the same one that one of the ones we were trying to shoot the day before. And so, like, what I mean by that is, and that's, but with this whole story, I guess, is like, in that situation, it was important to be willing to adjust. Like, I don't think our intentions were to go in there. But once we started seeing deer, it's like, no, just stop now. Like, not stop, but be aware.
Right. Pay attention.
And I mean, I don't know. I'm always hard on Ben. I always throw Ben under the bus. So sorry, Ben, but son wasn't ready. Like he just wasn't ready enough to where it's like, well, there he is, Ben.
Yeah.
Like, kind of wish you would have slowed down and let me catch up with you, or like we just been together and been ready here, because like there he goes. And we didn't find him again the rest of the day. So it's like, never say never either. Like at the end of the day, like, you might have a spot in mind, and I think especially when hunting during the rut and during gun season, be ready.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like if you got a gun, be ready.
Yeah.
You can be mowing the woods down with your feet. Have that puppy like ready to.
Oh, you can
at least get on something quick.
You can be walking, stomping through the woods at frickin' however many miles an hour you can walk, and still walk up on a buck and kill him with a gun. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, like.
You can do it with a bow too.
Yeah.
You can do it with a bow too, for
yeah.
sure. I mean, I've had many a bow hunts, but why I mentioned the rut is because I think your odds go up significantly, and like, perspectives might be a little crossed here too, because you guys have such a long gun season during rut. But like, if I'm hauling ass through the woods in anywhere in the country, and it's the time of the year where it might be the time of the year where they're rutting, never say never. I mean, I'm not saying I'm constantly arrow knocked or whatever. It's just like that time of year it's still predictable to a degree, but that's when the really unpredictable stuff happens, where like you're walking back to the truck and he's, oh my goodness, he's laying there looking at our truck. I mean, weirder stuff have happened.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. It covered a lot. I enjoy talking to you because we go down some rabbit holes, but I think it's stuff that really, unless you're like talking about it, sometimes you don't think about it. As you're talking and going back and forth, it's almost like you're learning as you go and realizing stuff that you haven't and a lot of times it's like something that you thought of once a year ago, and then it comes back up and you get to examine it a little bit and bounce it off people, so it's always good.
Oh yeah,
I enjoy it.
Well, what I like about our conversations too is like they have this tendency to be very behavior based and strategy based and just like kind of oddball details. Like they're not necessarily the traditional type strategy. And I feel that way like group wise, like, all of you guys, like whenever we talk hunting, it's just different type of stuff, kind of throwing out those those oddball theories that like, man, like, is he gonna think
But
I'm crazy,
I
or is he gonna kind of be like, I could see it?
I think sometimes though those are the ones that people don't articulate very well, and they don't
Yes.
think about, and they could make a big difference, even though it's a tiny weird detail that like you pick up on a little thing, and you're like, I think I might have something there, and then you act on it, and you're right, and it's like, holy crap, that was the ticket right there. But if you
Yeah.
just didn't think that deep, or you never heard anybody say it, or you never talked about it, it might not be a thing. Like, I just,
Yeah.
when you're studying this stuff, you kind of come up with some, like I said, it varies by landscape and deer and all that stuff. But I mean, for sure, I think those details are super important, and they're the details that like you can't just. If someone asks you, okay, what does your e-scouting process look like? None of those details aren't coming up with a suggestion. They're not coming up. Or like, how do you walk quiet, or how do you still hunt with a bow in November? Like those details aren't coming up. And
Not
so
very often.
I think that these types of conversations encourage people, myself included, to think about some of those details, because I really do think that like in your particular situation, on a particular day, after a particular year, whatever, that could be a very big deal. But unless you're in that exact instance, it's tough to really relate that and speak on it to someone else. Like, you get like a message from somebody, hey, how do you do this, and you're like, dude, there's so many variables. Like, this is like a generalization, and then you're like, they tell you one detail. It's like, well, forget everything I just said, because that has nothing to do with your situation, because I didn't know that, and I'm not there. So there's so much stuff. It's tough. But if you can start to think about these things, look at your area, look at your deer that you're hunting, or whatever area, and start to pick those apart, I just think that's like, I've noticed so many details in so many areas that like I never heard anybody talk about ever. Like I've never heard anybody talk about like that in this area, and it's like, I don't know.
Well, I
think
think
they're
there's a
important.
couple of things that relate to what you just said that are kind of like kind of nutshell type things. Like one is I've started to realize that I'm onto something, but I can't articulate it yet. Like I'm starting to find myself like there often.
Yeah.
Like I might have like 7 little subtopics that I like am on right now in my head, but I don't know how to, and like articulate is the perfect way to put it. It's like I still haven't quite figured out a way to talk about it yet. It's like I know the mistake, maybe even, but I still don't know how to explain it correctly to where I feel like everybody's gonna pick up what I'm talking about. So that's a big part of it. And then also just like something that I've been catching myself thinking and doing and saying a lot recently, and again, all of hunting is, well, I know it could happen because I've heard somebody say it, but I personally have not seen it. And until I do, it's hard to actually believe it. I do believe it, like deep down, I believe it. But honestly, Brett, it's like, until I saw the footage of you tracking that buck and him just laying there looking the other way, it's like halfway hard to believe that can even happen. I know it can.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I know it can, but I've had so many days where that thing is so gone. And then what gets annoying too, this is annoying to me, is when folks will be like, they'll like for example, if you told me that story just based off my experiences, it would be super easy for me to be like, yeah, that wouldn't happen where I hunt. It's like, what certainly could. Like, why couldn't it? Like that's crazy to me. Like to say that it could never. That's like, it's like never say never on anything. And if people are able to like say that they've experienced something, it absolutely can happen. And I just think that sometimes, as it's playing out, it's not maybe playing out exactly like somebody else's example. But if you can start to recognize it early, you might be able to take advantage of it in the moment. Like, I've never seen that, but then all of a sudden you're like, wait, am I seeing that? No, I am seeing that. And then you take advantage of it. But most of the time, we're so stubborn and we're so close-minded that we think, well, this can be happening. And then we miss our opportunity until the next time. Does that make sense?
I think
like
100%.
just try not to be.
I think that half the time,
hey everybody, maybe try not to be so close-minded and stubborn, eh?
No, well, I mean that is my first reaction all the time. Is to be closed-minded and stubborn. Then I go,
You're right.
Hold on a minute, dummy. Like, yeah, okay. Like, where's this got you in the past? And it's like, all right, let me think about this. And then it's like, hey, and to your point, it's like, I haven't seen that, but and it's the bedding, like the bedding and the cut thing is the one thing I'm like,
yep.
Are they bedding? Maybe they are. I just don't believe. I shouldn't say I don't believe. It seems to me, and I have a hard time believing that bucks are consistently bedding in thick cuts. But there's evidence that people have seen. Not that I haven't ever seen it, but I'm like, I don't know. But it's like, well, maybe I should consider it more and take, a closer look at that. I mean, I think another thing, there was something else I wanted to evaluate recently that I heard. Oh, it was the rut timing thing. I was so steadfast on some of these, rut dates and the best dates and breeding when it was in this area. But then I saw 3, and it's not a very big sample size, but I saw 3 fawns in 2 days turkey hunting. Those does had to have been bred right around November 1st, and it was like boom, 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 and I'm like, well, that doesn't line up with what I have in my head, and I'm like, all right, well, maybe it's not as set in stone as I think, and maybe I need to keep that loose. Then because it's so easy, and we want to put things in boxes and say, okay, that's settled, it's done, pack it away, and we can just, it's part of the foundation. But there's not much you can really do, actually do that. You can have your generalities and stuff you go back to, but you always got to look at it critically and say, hey, I might be wrong on this, or this situation that may not apply. And I think staying flexible and, like you said, open-minded is such a big deal. Because then
but it's hard.
Yeah, it is. It's hard. And sometimes it's mentally exhausting to be like, fuck, I can't even rely on that anymore. I got to go reevaluate this again. It's like, motherfucker,
oh, yeah, dude.
Thought I was onto something. Yeah. And it's like, well, here we go. Okay, let's freaking break it down again and start from scratch and from the bottom and build it back up. So
I think it's just, I mean, this is such a, maybe it makes the end of the conversation anticlimactic, but it's kind of just when you say go back through all the things we've talked about, it's kind of just and this is the way they kind of, they all end. It's well, at the end of the day, if you can go. You know what I mean? Whether that's scout or hunt itself, no matter what, if you have the opportunity to go, you probably should just go. I mean, if you want to maximize what you can learn. And I think of just thinking of it I'm going to be a student of the woods. That's definitely the best approach. Because no matter what, you're never totally failing, right? You can use, the lack of a filled tag as motivation, call it failing. But ultimately, if your main objective is just to be able to learn more about, whatever variation, because for example, I really want to learn a lot about the animal, but personally, I really like learning a lot about how can I get the best cover? How can I beat their eyes? How can I, you start going down all these different rabbit holes of how can I use the sun to my advantage? How can I use the wind to my advantage? I mean, but you're never going to do that and maximize your opportunity if you don't go,
Yeah. No.
I mean, and sometimes I even catch myself being grumpy, oh man, I don't want to just go up to this place and hike. I want to hike somewhere where I'm scouting or whatever. But then I can go, just place that I'm never even going to hunt. Maybe it's a no hunting spot. But then I see deer. Well, if I go into that closed-minded and think, oh, I can't hunt these deer, it's then I'm limiting myself on what I could be learning from the actual animal itself that's standing right there.
Yep.
Oh, these deer are stupid. They're park deer. Hell, they're park deer. But they still got to survive from something.
They're still alive.
And I just think that that's just you just think positive and go into it open-minded, and you got a pretty good chance at coming away with quite a bit of knowledge every time you go out there. And I think that's what makes it also fun. But then you go right back to the drawing board constantly.
This is a really just basic example, but the park deer and how you can learn something. It's You walk by those park deer, and they're standing right there, and you keep walking, and they stand right there, and there's nothing. The second you stop, take a step off the trail, and look, they're gone. And it's like, what did we just learn? I don't know. Well, we learned that that trail is normal for them. Humans on that trail, but you just did something abnormal, and you made them uncomfortable that they're not used to seeing. So, okay, well, how can I relate that to where I hunt? Well, you can in a very easy way. And you just saw a very clear example before your eyes of that reaction, whereas maybe the deer where you hunt don't have the same tolerance, and you don't even see that reaction, but it happens, and now it's like, okay, so how are the deer hunting how are they reacting to humans? And it's like you start to think about that. Oh, okay. Well, maybe they don't let you walk right like 20 yards from them, but maybe they sit up on the ridge where you can barely see them and you don't even see them go. Like you can learn from these things, and just because you're, in the area you don't hunt or not in hunting or walking by tame park deer doesn't mean you can't learn from them.
Yeah, I completely agree. You can never stop. If you have the right mindset, you never have to stop learning. I mean, walk outside your house. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of town or whatever. Like, walk outside and start looking at the way the wind blows off certain things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can literally constantly be learning. Start walking, walk on gravel. Practice walking on gravel where you're not crunching every like I do that type of stuff all the time. And I mean, you can always try to improve and get a little bit better at all kinds of things. And I just think you don't always have to be like, it doesn't always have to be a certain way. Like, if you have the open mind, like you got a chance at improving something. And I mean, it's pretty wild. Sometimes the things that I pick up on are in the times that I least expect it, and it's just all because you're just like trying to think about things differently. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's a good one. That's a good place to end. Keep us updated on your season. Hopefully you get
Absolutely. You guys do the same. There's probably a good chance I'm going to be, trying to head that away this season. So
you let us know. We'll probably
that's
be
the
here.
game plan. As long as the other things that I'm doing, go the way that I hope, which you never know. But
dude, you never know.
I'm trying to give myself a lot of time so that way I can make it up that way.
Yeah, good. Make it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We will see you on the next one.